My stepmother announced my pregnancy on Facebook before I even had a chance to say anything about it, after she broke the one rule when learning about this information, that being that she needed to keep her mouth shut. And now as a result, I'm seriously pissed off and I've now banned her from being in the delivery room when I give birth, which has caused, as I'm sure you can imagine, a lot of friction in my family. And at this point, I don't know if I made a mistake and I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of reference, my mom died when I was 15 years old and I'm 27 now, and my dad remarried several years ago. Now, my stepmother is the type of person who really pushes herself into people's lives, and she really just wants to be involved in everything. So we have a relationship, but it is very complicated. When I found out I was pregnant, I told my dad, my brother, and my stepmom. And the only reason that I told her was because I didn't think it would be fair to ask my dad to keep such a big secret from his wife. The reason I wanted to keep it private was because my previous pregnancy ended up being a stillbirth. It was one of the hardest experiences of my life, and I didn't want to announce this pregnancy until after the baby was born and healthy. Last time, dealing with everyone's questions and sympathy afterwards was really overwhelming. Now, I was very clear with all three of them that this pregnancy was not to be shared with anyone. No friends, no extended family, literally nobody. But then on Monday morning, I woke up and I saw that my stepmother had posted my pregnancy on Facebook. She even uploaded my ultrasound photo. She called me her daughter and announced that she was going to be a grandmother. And when I saw this, my heart sank. I immediately called my dad and I asked him if he knew that she was going to post it, and he said he had no idea and told me he would ask her to take it down. I then called my stepmother and I asked her why she would do that to me, and she just acted like it wasn't that big of a deal and said to me, "Oh, I just wanted my friends to know." But that's when I told her, no, that is absolutely a big deal. It wasn't her pregnancy to announce. And if you remember, I specifically told you not to tell anyone. In the heat of the moment, I also told her that I'm not her daughter and that she would not be welcome in the delivery room when my baby is born. Well, she called me crazy and I just hung up. Later that day, my dad called me, and you know what? He agreed. What she did was wrong and she should have never posted about my pregnancy. However, he thinks I'm overreacting by banning her from the delivery room. So seriously, am I the jerk in this situation? Like, am I making a mistake by telling her she cannot be there when I give birth? Because at this point, I'm seriously pissed off and I just don't know what to do. Okay, dude, your stepmom sucks. I hate to say it, but sometimes that stereotype about stepmothers being evil is just really true. Because what do you mean she posted about the pregnancy, dude? You probably just found out about it. And the original poster's rationale behind this, by the way, is completely valid. Like, there are so many things that can go wrong with a pregnancy, it's not even funny. So for her to overstep these boundaries and be like, "Oh, I'm gonna tell everybody," like, that is so unbelievably gross. She did that because, you know what? She wanted attention. She wanted to get all the attention from this situation and claim it for herself. And I hate people who act like that. They're only excited about your good news because they get to share it, which is something people like this love doing before you even get a word in edgewise. So honestly, I don't blame you for banning her from the room. Who knows what she could do? Like, she might even record it and post it on Facebook again, or take secret selfies with you and be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm a grandma," completely taking the attention away from you that you absolutely deserve. Because this feels incredibly violating and very unfair, and I don't think you should take it lightly. If you like Am I the Jerk and what we're doing over here, please check out Am I the Genius. It's going to be linked down below in the description. Just click and go ahead and subscribe to them. And also, if you have your own stories you want to submit, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you want to submit your own stories. We're reading them all the time and we're picking out the best ones, so trust me, we would love to hear what you have to say. Am I the jerk for accepting an internship even though my boyfriend doesn't want me to do it? As he says I'm being selfish by taking this on and that instead I should focus my time on him. Here's what's going on. I'm a 20-year-old female and I'm in a long-distance relationship with my boyfriend for about 2 years now. I'm in university and I got an internship for the summer, and despite my anxiety, I want to put myself out of my comfort zone and build up my professional and life experiences. The internship itself is nonprofit and I would help with marketing and storytelling for the company, which supports people with mental and physical disabilities. My boyfriend didn't and doesn't want me to do it because he says it takes time away from our summer. It would be like 3 days a week and 6 hours a day. He's always been the type of person who loves when we just stay home and stay in our rooms and call and spend all day and night together, and I love doing that too, but I've always been more outgoing and love my family and friends time. I'm also a pet sitter on the side since I love animals and it's a good way to make money, and that also means that sometimes I spend spend less time with him. It's been a huge issue and I try and compromise a lot and so does he, and it's been a constant issue in our relationship. I also have been diagnosed with cancer just recently and I will have to start chemotherapy. It all happened so fast, but at least it's a treatable cancer and it's going to be difficult, but I'm trying to believe in myself. I also communicated with my internship about it and they said they will always let me do days I need online or switch schedules around so that I can focus on my health. I'm very nervous to even start the internship and have no ideas for how I'll approach it because the only marketing I've done in the past was for a student-run cafe, and this is much more serious and completely out of my comfort zone. Also, I am an information systems major and this internship is for marketing, but I still want to try instead of just dropping it, especially when it's about to start so soon. I feel horrible and selfish for this, and he says I am selfish and only thinking about myself, and I seriously just don't know why I'm like this. Despite being nervous and needing to start chemotherapy soon, and it being very out of my comfort zone, I still want to give it a try. Maybe I'm being ridiculous or childish or selfish because he is so hurt and he's telling me that I don't care about his happiness. So right now I feel lost and I just don't know what to do. Okay, dude, I'm gonna say this as nicely as I can. Your boyfriend's an idiot for trying to hold you back like this. Like, what is he doing? He literally is trying to be like, oh, come on, don't do anything with your career. Stay inside and spend time with me instead. Like, dude, no, that is not happening. Like, maybe if you live closer, you could do that, but like, what are we talking about? She's not being selfish by picking up an internship. She's literally trying to further her career and get things together. Like, what in the world? It's so manipulative and it makes you feel like crap. It's like, dude, you're already under enough stress as it is. The last thing you need is to sit there and be like, oh yeah, on top of cancer, now my boyfriend hates me for taking an internship. Like, I don't know, that just kind of rubs me the wrong way personally. So no, you're not the jerk. In my opinion, I think the way your boyfriend's acting is a big red flag, and it's something that I would definitely not ignore. My girlfriend met with a man that she had an affair with for dinner this week. And honestly, after the fact, I'm not sure how to feel about this and I'm kind of feeling bothered by it. And now I really just don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I will just start off by saying that I'm not a jealous person by nature. In relationships, I don't mind my partner having friends who are men and spending one-on-one time with them, obviously, nor do I especially mind them being on good terms with their ex-boyfriends. As a matter of fact, that is ultimately a good thing in my opinion. It shows breakups have been dealt with amicably. I'm okay with partners meeting their ex for a coffee or a drink or a dinner in most circumstances. I've been dating my girlfriend for around 7 months, and ever since our first date, we didn't really know each other before then, so I would characterize things as pretty new. Before me, my girlfriend was in a few serious relationships, including a 6-year relationship, which as a side note was an engagement at one point, which she ended up calling off around 10 months before we started dating. At the end of that relationship of 6 years, she began an affair with a married man who was in his 60s. And that's to say that they had an affair while she was in her relationship and he was married. She says the overlap for her relationship was minor, and that at the end of the day, he was and remains married. And apparently all of that ended about 5 months before we began dating. He no longer lives in the city we live in, but he passes through for work occasionally. They've met for coffee before and for lunch, and she always told me in advance. In fact, she met him last week for dinner at 8 p.m. She told me they planned to do it about a week before. Anyways, I assumed they would be wrapped up by like, I don't know, 11 at the latest, but this was really never discussed. I then got a text at midnight saying, oh, I'm still out, but all is okay. And then a call at like 1:30 in the morning from her from a cab on her way home. And my God, she was completely smashed. And I was like, oh, did you have fun? And she was like, oh yeah, we're just really big drinkers. The next morning, she called me somewhat sheepishly and was very hungover. They basically had a bottle of wine and a bunch of other drinks as well. I also discovered that the man was her former boss, which makes me even more uncomfortable because it means that there was an even more specific and involved dynamic between them. They traveled for work together. He is still a person who can provide her with opportunities in the future or even connections. And to be honest, I feel really weird about that. And I feel uncomfortable with my own discomfort because this is not who I want to be in a relationship dynamic. I really don't want to be someone who isn't supportive of being on good terms with someone who is important to you. But while it is true that I really don't mind people seeing their exes from time to time, I also don't think that this is a normal situation of meeting an ex. Like, this was a man she had an affair with. The relationship was defined by secrecy and transgression before. Now, despite this, the dinner really didn't bother me, but the amount of time spent together and more than that, the alcohol, like that is what's really sitting weird with me. When I asked her how late they were at the restaurant, she just said, oh, until I got in the cab. But I then checked and it definitely closed at midnight. When I said this to her, she then got defensive suddenly. She said, oh, the bar must have stayed open past 12. And then she said her grasp on time was hazy because she had drank so much. And then she said that they left and she looked for a subway station, and then they just sat on a bench and talked while she called a cab. While I'm not even saying this is implausible, I don't know why she wouldn't have just said that from the start. I don't really think that anything happened, but the whole dynamic and the vibe just sits really weird with me, and it feels like it was crossing a line. So I've said that my feelings are hurt and I feel uncomfortable, and that I want to take a few days to decompress and just assess why, and that I'm doing so in order to have a conversation which is not reactive or even informed by me feeling weird in the moment. And honestly, that felt like the most fair and level-headed thing to do. Well, it's now been 2 days, and while initially apologetic, today she's begun telling me that she won't be made to feel lesser than or suffer in a corner when she feels she did nothing wrong, and has even suggested I'm being disrespectful of her and making her walk on eggshells. Later in the day, I got this long laundry list of things from the past 6 months, which by the way is literally the entirety of our relationship. And it's all these things that I've done to try and make her feel sidelined. And my god, the list she made was just really small, petty things that just did not add up to what she just did. So what do you guys think? Is she finding a way to twist the conversation? Is this just a, oh yeah, well you upset me too moment to try and get out jail free? Am I being overreactive? Am I being unreasonable? Am I seriously fooling myself into thinking that I'm more tolerant and understanding than I am? Or am I just being controlling? Or are my instincts telling me to run from this situation? Because right now I don't know what to do. Okay, in my opinion, I think the fact that you're okay with your girlfriend meeting up with a former affair partner, that is so stupid, dude. There's no way this is not some kind of cheating situation. Seriously, you don't know this lady, and I guarantee you she's probably hooking up with this guy just like she did before. Dude, you're dating a homewrecker. She literally cheated while she was in a relationship, and she helped this guy cheat on his wife. What do you think was going on past midnight after, the bar closed? That's a pretty convenient hour-and-a-half blip that, she just simply can't account for. And if she does try to account for it, she's stumbling through her words. Dude, she absolutely is cheating on you. So yeah, I don't think this is a good situation. I think your gut instinct is right. And I know if I was in your shoes, I would be dumping her and moving on. Because holy crap, this is all just one giant red flag, and I would not ignore that. Today at my waitressing job, I dealt with one of the worst people I've ever dealt with in my life, as this lady was so rude that at the end of service, she literally gave me $0 as a tip, which really was upsetting, and honestly, I don't know what to make of this. Here's what happened. Okay, so for a bit of context about me, I'm back working as a pool cocktail waitress where I've worked for the last 4 summer seasons. There are rules, obviously, don't drink with the guests, ring everything in, call a manager for comps, check the IDs, etc. But there's this one cardinal sin amongst the waitresses that I always try to follow, because these girls do not play around, and that's the following. Do not take a guest in another girl's section. That is quite literally the quickest way to piss off another girl. Now, this is really hard at a pool, because anyone can swim to one side and order from you, but I usually ask where they're sitting, and I let them know that this other server will be with them, and then I give them a menu and I tell them, oh, I'll let them know that you're ready to order. And with that in mind, let's get started with the main story, because things get really weird from here. Now, I was laden down with food and drinks, literally barely holding on to it at all. And this woman's waving me down in the pool as I'm serving a guest and closing them out. She's been hanging out in the pool of my side for an hour or so I thought to myself, okay, she must have a chair in my section. I give her the whole, 1 minute finger, and she lets out a huff. Can we at least get a menu? So I go and I give her a menu. I do my deliveries and I circle back to take her order. She then orders some drinks and sandwiches that take the longest to make, which is exactly what I told her, and yes, that will be important later on, to which she then proceeds to swim back to the middle of the other waitresses' sections. And I think to myself, crap, this cannot be good. I then let the other waitress know I took a guest in her section's order, and would she like me to put the food and drinks in under her name? The other waitress says, put it in, just close her out afterwards. So I put the order in, I grab my next round of drinks, and I start delivering. Now this woman is immediately waving me down from the other side of the pool. Again, not my section at all. I finish my deliveries on my side, and I bring her her drinks, and she asks me, are our sandwiches coming out soon? Now, mind you, it's been 10 minutes, and these sandwiches are made to order, usually taking about 30 minutes in total. I then remind her that the items are made to order, and I let her know, hey, you are technically not in my section, but the food is in. I'll bring it out as soon as it arrives, but I'll have to close you out afterwards. In fact, that lady over there is actually your server. I'll bring her over to meet you. When her food arrives, I bring the other server over to drop it off, and I introduce them. I say the server's name, and I say, oh, she'll be taking care care of you as you're in her section. The other server then asks if she wants anything else, but they don't. I then present the guest with her bill, and she makes a big show of writing 0 on the paper. And it's like, okay, that's fine. I genuinely don't care, like I make good hourly wage, and I get excellent tips, so I can eat a 0 tip. She then says to me, I just want to let you know that you have given us the worst service of my life. I then say to her, oh, I'm sorry, I certainly didn't mean to. I just can't take guests out of my section. She then shoves the book back at me and says, well, you guys better figure it out. Now, in my head, I wanted to say, well, you've been one of the worst guests I've ever served to, so we're square. But I'm genuinely curious, like, did I do anything wrong here? I would gladly take a guest's order and put it in under like the other girl's name, but I've been doing this job for 4 years, and each of my coworkers are different on how they feel about their sections, or like their opinion on taking a guest who isn't even their own. Because personally, I'd rather err on the side of caution than piss off a coworker who I work with for 5 days out of the week. Okay, dude, as someone who's also done serving and like some kind of like food service in general, I totally understand where you're coming from. And yeah, that really is a cardinal sin if you take someone's guest. You don't take customers out of other people's like sections, and you really try to stay in your lane. But the way this guest was acting was incredibly inappropriate. Seriously, like the way this guest was acting was incredibly entitled and very weird. I would personally be pissed off dealing with someone like that, having to navigate their stupid mood and like, oh, we're not gonna give you any tip. As if that's gonna hurt me. Like, dude, I could care less. Because the original poster is clearly doing it right. They know for a fact they get plenty of money from their tips, like they're doing a good job. And just because there's like one disgruntled moron doesn't mean that somehow it completely takes away from the work you already do. So yeah, I don't think you're at fault here. I don't think you broke any of the cardinal sins about serving. Like, you obviously didn't want to take this lady, but it just kind of happened. And also, when it comes to like serving this lady, I think you did everything right. You communicated what was going on, and you just said, hey, sorry, but you're just gonna have to deal with it. Which in most cases, that's like the best you really can do. Am I the jerk for blocking a client who found my Instagram page, who has literally been messaging me nonstop for the past few weeks? Because now he's offended, and I'm just not sure if I made a mistake or if I should have done this differently. Here's what happened. I'm a 24-year-old female, and I'm a veterinarian with a public Instagram account. I don't use it for work. It's mostly photos of my dog, my friends, me traveling, and just day-to-day life. Well, a few months ago, one of my clients somehow found my account and started following me. I didn't think much of it at first, since the account is public, but then he started liking my photos, replying to stories, and even sending me direct messages. And you know what? At first I just ignored the messages because they were friendly enough, mostly just compliments and comments about places I'd been, and occasional questions about my dog. But it started feeling a little uncomfortable because I wasn't responding, and yet he kept finding reasons to message me every few weeks. I don't really like mixing my personal life with work, and I wasn't interested in having conversations with clients outside of appointments. Eventually, I got tired of seeing the messages, and I decided to block him. Now, the awkward part is that he brought it up during an appointment recently. He seemed genuinely offended and asked why I blocked him when he was only trying to be friendly. I then told him that I prefer to keep professional and personal boundaries separate, but he said blocking felt extreme, and that I could have just ignored him if I wasn't interested in talking. Some of my friends agree and think blocking was unnecessarily harsh, while others think that it was weird for a client to keep messaging someone who never replied. So am I the jerk here? Because I really don't know what to make of this. Okay, dude, you are not the jerk. This guy clearly had an agenda. Because think about it, this guy was going out of his way to message you and leave you like little remarks, being like, oh wow, that's really cool, and like leaving comments. Like, come on, dude, you're absolutely trying to ask her out. Like, this guy's not getting the message. It's honestly so weird that, yeah, he can be offended by you blocking him, and yet he doesn't realize that, yeah, she's probably not interested in him after like the first few weeks of ignored messages. Like, this guy just sounds weird in my opinion, and honestly completely out of line. Because I agree with the original poster. There absolutely should be a line between personal and work life. So no, you're not the jerk. This guy was being a weirdo. He was slowly trying to weasel his way into your life, and that is just incredibly annoying. Today, I need to confess that I've been pretending to remember a coworker's name for almost 2 years, and now it's way too late to ask what it actually is, and I seriously just don't know what to do. Here's what's happening. Okay, so this started so small. Her name is either Karen or Sharon. I genuinely cannot remember which one I was told at the beginning, and at some point, a few weeks in, I decided it was way too late to ask, so I just stopped using her name entirely. And you know what? For a while, it worked. I would start sentences by saying, hey, or, oh, so I was thinking, and she never never seemed to notice. We actually get along pretty well, which is the part that makes all of this so much worse. We eat lunch together sometimes. She knows my girlfriend's name. She knew when my dad was in the hospital. She brought me a birthday cake in March, and yet still I don't know her name. The problem is, it's now been so long that asking would require an explanation, and I simply just don't have one that doesn't make me sound insane. Asking her, sorry, what's your name again? Only works like in the first week, but in month 22, it's like a full incident. I've tried to find it through email threads, but she just signs off with just the letter K, which tells me nothing except that I've narrowed it down to like 2 options, and somehow that's made it way worse. In fact, last week she introduced me to someone as one of her closest work friends, and you know what? I just smiled and said it back. I'm such a coward and also possibly a really bad person. So seriously, if she ever finds this, I am genuinely so sorry. I'm sure your name is lovely, even though I have no idea what it is. Okay, honestly, I completely understand where the original poster is coming from because I have the worst memory on planet Earth. Like, I've got the memory of a goldfish, dude. If I don't say your name like 1,000 times when I meet you, I'm guaranteed to forget it like right then and there. So this story resonates with me, dude. Holy crap, I've done this so many times. I don't think I've gone like 22 weeks without knowing it, but I've definitely gone a long time. And these are good people. They're people that I really care about. They're like solid individuals that I just really have a good time with. And yet I seriously can't remember their stupid name, dude. Like, it drives me crazy. So yeah, hopefully you figure it out one day, and hopefully you can find a scenario in which someone can like get her to say it, because I can guarantee you the second you do know her name, you will probably never forget it. My toxic, narcissistic boyfriend has been cheating on me behind my back. So I got revenge by literally throwing all of his clothing and property outside my door, all up onto my roof and on the side of the road, resulting in him having to take multiple trips just to get it down, as well as having his iPad stolen by a bunch of teenagers who snatched it off the side of the road before this guy could come and get it. Here's how I did it. I was in my early 20s dating this guy who was ridiculously controlling and full of himself. Just a classic narcissist. Everything revolved around him, and in his mind, he could do no wrong. I'm sure you know the type that I'm talking about. Anyways, after I caught him cheating, I finally hit my limit and I told him I was done for good. The way I found out that he was cheating, by the way, was the best part. I had had my suspicions for a while, so I went through his phone. And sure enough, there were months of messages between him and some girl he worked with. Flirty garbage, talking about how he couldn't wait to leave me, all that nonsense. But one text in particular had me rolling my eyes. He had literally sent her this the day before. "She's driving me crazy. She's got me going through the roof. I need you so bad, babe." Got me through the roof? I'm pretty sure that's not how the expression goes. Your blood pressure can go through the roof, your anxiety or your rage, sure. But unless you're Spider-Man or a haunted Victorian child, you're not going through any stupid roof. The next morning while he was at work, I texted him and I said I was done. He kept pressing me to explain, but I never admitted that I had read his messages. I let him stew in his own arrogance until he finally realized I wasn't bluffing. By that point, he had pretty much moved into my house, so naturally, he wanted all of his stuff back. He texted me something like, "You better have all my crap outside when I get there. And I mean every little bit of it. I'm not taking 2 trips." And that's when I thought to myself, oh, don't worry, sweetheart. I'm gonna take care of this in a way that you will truly never forget. So I gathered every last thing he had at my place, which included at least a third of his wardrobe, a pile of overpriced hats, 2 pairs of pristine Jordans, and an iPad. I stuffed everything minus the iPad into a trash bag, tied it loosely, walked outside, and launched it straight onto the roof. Some of his clothing flew out midair and scattered across the yard. Most of it landed on the roof and just chilled up there like it paid rent. As for the iPad, I put it in a box and I set it near the edge of the driveway. Not long afterwards, a couple of teenagers walked by and peeked inside. I was sitting on the porch when one of them asked, "Is this yours?" And I said, "Nope." To which they then asked if they could have it, and I said, "Sure, why not?" He said put his stuff outside, but he never said that I had to guard it. About 2 hours later, he pulled up, saw his clothing strewn across the yard, and a trash bag dangling off the roof, and he absolutely lost it. He started pounding on the door, furious and yelling, "Why are my clothes on the roof?" I then swung the door open and I looked him dead in the eye. I said to him, "Well, judging by the text you sent your little girlfriend, apparently I had you through the roof, and I figured your clothes might as well join you. You told me to put your crap outside, but you didn't say where." He then stood there red-faced, his fists clenched, absolutely seething. "And how in the F am I supposed to get my stuff off the roof?" Well, when he said that, I just shrugged and I smiled sweetly. I said to him, "Well, maybe your girlfriend can loan you a ladder," and then I slammed the door in his face. The funniest part is that he ended up making 2 trips after all, and he even did come back later with a ladder. And whether or not she loaned it to him, I couldn't really say, because I stayed inside with the door locked, and I haven't heard from him much ever since then. Oh man, I love this so much because this guy absolutely deserves this. If you're gonna cheat on your partner and be like, oh man, they're driving me through the roof, then you can expect to have all your crap on the roof and outside for it to be stolen. The original poster went on to clarify that the iPad was something that this guy was like, oh yeah, you stole it, and even tried to claim that he's gonna GPS track it and basically catch the original poster for stealing it, but they just reiterated that they don't know where it went and they just left it outside, and that was that. So honestly, with all things considered, good for you for getting your revenge. People who act like the boyfriend in this story are pieces of garbage. They treat their partner like crap, they're absolutely full of themselves, and then they go behind their back and start cheating, and it's like, dude, what is your problem? You're the one that lit this relationship on fire, not the original poster. So if they didn't like the treatment they received, then they should probably have done a better job of like maintaining their relationship. Because if you're gonna cheat like that, then you should be ready for all of the consequences. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my parents that they are no longer allowed to stay at my house when they visit from the United Kingdom? Because right now they're saying that I'm basically banning them from my home, and that if I do this, they'll never be able to visit ever again. And at this point, I'm honestly not sure if I'm making a mistake. Here's what's going on. Okay, for a bit of backstory, I'm from the United Kingdom, but I moved to the US when I married my spouse. We have kids, and my parents are very keen to have a relationship with them. My parents are still together, but don't get on, so they refuse to come at the same time as each other. Since I moved over here, my parents have stayed here for around a month each every year. We do have the space in the house, but I still am never comfortable when they're here. My parents are very high-strung people, and I did not have a pleasant upbringing. I was always on edge, and I do not feel comfortable around them. They don't get on with each other, and for example, my dad, who is staying for a month, expects to borrow a vehicle to be able to get around. And for reference, we live in a very rural area, and he was very irritated this morning because the car's battery died, and I refused to let him take my car. Every time I broach the subject of them not staying here anymore, they say things like, "You're going to bar me from seeing my grandkids?" And this is more of an issue with my mother than my father, as she is way more vocal. Or the fact that it was me who decided to move 5,000 miles away, and therefore I need to accommodate their needs. They even stated that they can't afford an Airbnb, as for reference, there are no hotels in the area. Now, I do live in a very rural area with no real amenities apart from like a few Airbnbs, so their argument is that if they cannot stay with me, then they are barred from all contact. But when they're here, they expect me to feed them and cater to them. My dad is a type 1 diabetic and is very set in his ways, so he is very picky, and they expect it because they're my parents. I don't visit my home country very often, and so I very rarely stayed with them and would 100% get a hotel if it was the other way around. I am just exhausted. They say it's only a few months a year, and they are there to help, but taking my kids to the park 3 times a week and doing the dishwasher every day isn't the help I want or need. I just want to keep my routine and feel safe and comfortable within my own home. So am I the jerk here, or do I have any kind of justification? Because right now I don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk. These people are bad guests in your house. They're literally taking advantage of you, and they're acting like spoiled brats. And it's like, dude, you literally are doing them a favor by letting them stay in your house a month each. That's 2 months out of the year that you gotta deal with these people. And that sounds super obnoxious. So honestly, I don't blame you for saying they gotta find some other accommodation, because the way they're acting, in my opinion, is super entitled. Am I the jerk for not fixing my sister-in-law's car after setting some very serious terms? Because after dealing with their fickle nature for too long, I'm honestly at my breaking point and I don't know what to do. Here's what's happening. Okay, for the sake of the story, we'll call my sister-in-law Jane. Over the years, Jane has borrowed money from me. Now, as an example of this, on a family trip, I think I paid for a large group expense and she didn't pay me back the $400 for months. I gave her furniture for her apartment that my wife and I no longer were using, but I then had to pick it back up again when she didn't need it anymore, and it was really inconvenient. She's about 25 years old and about 6 years my junior. I honestly like her, but her behavior is really immature and selfish sometimes. She was having issues with her Volkswagen, as it breaks down a lot and she gets ripped off by mechanics often. I've changed the lights on it at least once, and her now fiance doesn't even attempt to do very easy DIY jobs that most people could do. Anyways, I'm an electromechanical technician, and a pretty good one at that, and that stuff is pretty easy for me. The part that got me though is that she thinks that because I can do it, she can then shuffle all her problems off to me to fix, making this somehow my job or something like that. For example, she's asked me to do her brakes in the past for like $50 and a case of beer, and I just said politely, no, I'm not doing that. I hate doing brakes, and that's not my hobby, lady. I mean, she seems to have no concept of value. Anyways, I still have tried to help her just a little bit. For example, her windshield wiper motor was on the fritz, and I told her it's not hard to replace. Just buy the part and bring it over and me and her can look at it. And this was during the summer, I believe. Well, fast forward and she waits until the dead of winter, and I'm now having a 3-month-old baby, and the windshield wiper motor finally totally dies and she basically can't drive it. I then tell her to come on a fairly warm day, and I specifically said bring her fiance and he can learn a thing or two in the process. Reason being is I don't want to be doing stuff like this for them if they aren't going to at least attempt to do it themselves. The day comes along and she doesn't even tell her fiance. I send him some text messages along the lines of, hey, are you too busy for this? And he says he doesn't appreciate that and that he has a secret Santa with his frat brothers that he's planned forever. He tells me that he doesn't need me to do this and instead that I could just be that friend who just helps them out. We then kind of get into it over the phone as I tell him this is more of his problem than mine, but he spins it around saying, oh, he trusts Jane can handle her problems and that he's not controlling like that. I tell him she's not solving it, she's literally just bringing it to me. He then gets mad and says his friend, who is a mechanic, can do it. Now, I still expect Jane to come, but she doesn't. Her and the fiance get into a fight over this and have their friends do it, who end up failing, and guess what? It's still broken. I then wind up apologizing just to smooth things over, and my wife just really didn't take my side 100%. She then winds up having her stepdad do it, and I never even said don't come over. So am I the jerk or am I dealing with a bunch of babies? Because right now I'm not sure what to do. Dude, you are dealing with a bunch of babies. Seriously, don't help these people ever again. They literally are one of those people who are like, oh man, I don't want to learn how to do it. I just want you to fix it every single time for free. Like, that seems really stupid, and I just would not take that for a second. They seem fickle and they seem like they don't know what they want, and it leaves you in a situation where you're having to like guess what's in their head and be like, okay, what do you actually want to do? And they're like, oh, I don't know. I'll have my uncle. Oh no, my friends do it. Oh no, I'll do it. And then nothing gets done and it's still broken. And then they still want to come to you and be like, oh, can you do it now? And that is super annoying. You should not have to deal with that. So no, you're not the jerk for not wanting to fix your sister-in-law's car, because these people sound like an absolute mess and you do not have to deal with that in the slightest. Am I the jerk for shutting down some guy who was obviously trying to talk to me at the gym, as I literally just was there to work out and get out? Because right now I feel like I ruined my reputation at the gym and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context, I'm a 32-year-old female and I don't talk to anyone at my gym outside of saying hi and bye to the people who work there and having polite etiquette when asking someone if they're using something and just saying thank you when they're done. This is partially for efficiency, but mostly because I go to the gym stoned out of my mind and I'm in the zone and I don't really want to talk to anyone. Last week after my workout, I walked over to the food carts by my gym to pick up some tacos. While I was there, some guy, maybe in his 40s, stopped me and said that he went to the same gym. Now, I had never noticed him before, but he like insisted on walking with me and was talking to me. And I was seriously kind of annoyed. Just because you see me on the street with my headphones out doesn't mean it's an invitation to talk to me. I made small talk and I tried to be polite, and I got out of there as quick as I possibly could. So the other day, when I'm at the gym, foam rolling out with my headphones in, this guy just beelines to me while I'm trying to avoid eye contact. He squats down next to me to say hi and give me a fist bump. I give him a quick heads up to acknowledge him, but I ignore the fist bump, and I avoid eye contact the rest of my time that I'm there. And then today, this guy comes into the gym and he sees me. I immediately avoid eye contact and he just doesn't come up to me. So I think he finally gets the picture. But then when I'm doing leg lifts, he comes over and tries to give me a fist bump. So I take out my headphones and I say, look man, I don't want to do this. I'm here to work out. I'm not here to make friends. I don't want to talk to you, okay? He starts to say, well, I was just saying hi. And I respond by saying, well, yeah, I get it, but please don't. Then I put my headphones back in and I just kept working out. I then realized that anyone who saw this probably thought I was a giant jerk, but I don't think someone's need for connection overrides my need to have a good workout. So am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I don't know what to do. Okay, honestly, the original poster is 100% correct. You do not have to like say hi to anybody or interact with anyone if you don't want to. Like, you literally could not have made your body language more obvious that you did not want to talk to him. And yet this guy still skips over there and says, oh yeah, the pretty lady's talking to me again. Let me go fist bump her again. This is gonna be great. It's like, no dude, take the hint. And since he wasn't taking the hint, I guess I gotta be blunt with you. So no, you're not the jerk, because you do not have to deal with that kind of garbage in the slightest. And the fact that he tried to be offended over that, in my opinion, shows exactly why women have so many problems at the gym. Because creepy guys like this absolutely ruin the experience for them. Am I the jerk for not cooking breakfast for my niece and nephew anymore, after my sister basically gave up on that responsibility because she sleeps in until 1 o'clock in the afternoon? Because right now, after I snapped at her, I feel really bad and I'm not sure if I made a mistake. Here's what's going on. To start things out, I'm a 36-year-old male, and my 34-year-old sister moved into my house about 2 months ago with her 2 kids. She has a son who's 7 years old and a daughter who's 4 years old. And this this is all after ending a really bad relationship. I've always been an early to rise kind of person, and I like to get up and make myself some breakfast at around 8 o'clock in the morning. Nothing spectacular, just whatever I felt that day. When my sister moved in, I quickly realized that she liked to sleep in, and some days she didn't get up until about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I gave her the benefit of the doubt since I knew how hard her breakup was going for her, but since my sister slept so late daily, she wouldn't get up and take care of her kids. I then got into a routine with my niece and nephew that basically whatever I cooked for myself for breakfast, I'd make enough for them as well until the other morning. I woke up and had the urge to make huevos ranchos. The kids immediately started complaining that they didn't want that and that they wanted something different. Well, I was nice and I ended up making them pancakes since it's not their fault that their mom is really struggling. The next morning I was making breakfast potatoes and eggs, but all I heard was, "Oh, we don't want that. We want something different." So again, I obliged. And finally, after 3 mornings of my unwanted food critics getting a separate meal, I finally told them, I'm no longer cooking 2 different meals for breakfast. If you don't like what I'm making, go ask your mom to get up and do it. So they went upstairs to wake her up, but she still didn't come downstairs until after 1 o'clock p.m. And the kids immediately started complaining that I refused to feed them, and my sister was pissed. She started in about how they needed to be fed by certain times, and a bunch of other things that she said to try and intentionally hurt me. But I finally snapped and I told her, look, I know you're depressed, but wake up and take care of your effing kids instead of expecting me to do it. She then got quiet after that and is still giving me the cold shoulder, but I know she's expecting me to apologize. So am I the jerk here? Because right now I honestly am not sure what to do. Dude, she's sleeping in until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's not just missing breakfast, she's missing lunch as well. That's 2 meals this lady's skipping out on for feeding her kids. Like, that is so unbelievably toxic and inappropriate, it honestly pisses me off and I'm not even living with her. Like, I can't imagine how frustrated you must be. So no, you're not the jerk here. She needs to step up and be the parent. I don't care how depressed she is. She needs to get up on time and take care of those kids. They deserve that. And the fact that she's trying to pin this all on you, in my opinion, is so unbelievably mean, especially because these are not your kids. My idiotic boss demanded that I hire his girlfriend onto a job that she definitely was not qualified for. So I decided to maliciously comply and listen to his instructions by hiring her immediately, resulting in major mess-ups on her part, which then led to 2 of our clients backing out of our company, causing my boss to be reassigned and his crush to be fired from the job. Here's how it all went down. Okay, I'm a part of a small hiring team at my workplace, and I take my position very seriously. Some time ago, we were looking to fill a key role that required someone sharp, organized, and ready to work under pressure. We had a solid shortlist after several interviews, and then my department supervisor pulled me aside. He told me flat out to hire one candidate in particular, not because she was the best fit, but because he wanted me to. I later heard through office rumors that she was an almost girlfriend basically, and this is someone that he had a thing for and was trying to impress. He said that I should, but just to make it work, and that he will take the heat if needed. Now, I refused at first, showing him her results of the interview. She was one of the least ranked people that we had. She was late to the interview, she gave vague answers, she couldn't explain basic industry terms, but he wouldn't listen and said it was a direct order. So I did exactly as he asked and I hired her. I gave her all the support I could, even offered extra onboarding help. But within a month, she accidentally sent a confidential client file to the wrong company. Then she once approved a purchase order for 10 times the budgeted amount because she obviously didn't read through all those numbers. It was from one mistake all the way to another. We lost a major client over the email slip up, and another pulled back on their contract due to delays on her end. When upper management started asking questions, my manager tried to dodge responsibility, but human resources already had the hiring records. Now, I made sure all instructions, including his, were documented, which was done intentionally, by the way, in case a situation like this ever came up, and you know what? It definitely did. He was then reassigned within the quarter, with her quietly disappearing not long after that. Well, it turns out hiring your crush isn't as cute when the company starts bleeding money, especially when you're bringing someone on who clearly has no idea what she's doing. Oh man, that's insane. Dude, this guy tanked his job because of this. This wasn't even like a spouse or someone that he was dating. This was an almost girlfriend he just wanted to like make look good and be like, oh yeah, I'll hire you on, baby. And here she goes and screws everything up. Like, dude, was it worth it? Was it worth losing your job and being reassigned? Like, what's going on right now? But I think the moral of this story is that, my God, you gotta write everything down. Get everything in writing before you do anything at your workplace. Because you can bet if it wasn't in writing, this boss would have thrown the original poster under the bus. But because they had something in writing, they were able to dodge any kind of responsibility for this crap going wrong. And that, in my opinion, is the most important aspect of this entire story. My neighbor's entitled daughter demands that I move my car back on my driveway, ignoring the fact that I just got my driveway redone and I didn't want to ruin it before it was ready to have a car. Here's what happened. Okay, so I either don't encounter many entitled people in my day, or I am really good at ignoring people, but this one just completely took the cake. So I just got my driveway replaced 2 days ago. I got asphalt and not concrete, and the contractor told me that I could park my car on it again after 3 days. Now Google said about 10 days, and as much money as I'd spent on it, I decided to listen to Google. I live on a two-way, yet a one driving lane street. On my side, all the houses are street level and have driveways, while the houses across the street are on a bit of a hill with steps leading up to them, and the only street parking is on my side. Their side has an alleyway and service road behind them where those owners can park, but a lot of them chose not to. They'd rather park in front of our houses, which is not a big deal. I don't own the street and I don't care who parks there as long as they're not blocking me in, and there are about 2 spots the size of a sedan between every driveway. Now I've been parking on the street in front of my own house for these 2 days now, and I plan to stay there for at least another 5. I did not park in the middle so that no other car can also park there because I'm not a jerk. Now one of my across the street neighbors has a daughter who is home from college. She's maybe 19, honestly I'm not really sure, but what I do know is that she drives an SUV that is entirely too big, and it won't fit in front of my car without partially blocking the driveway of the neighbor next to me. I'm outside this morning watering my flowers, minding my own business, and this girl comes over unannounced and uninvited, and the conversation went something like this. She said to me, "Hey, when are you moving your car?" And no, she didn't say hello, and there was definitely no pleasantries in this conversation. It was pure business, and I knew right here it was going to be problems. I said to her, "Excuse me?" She then said, "Well, my truck can't fit with your car there." I then look over to my driveway that is clearly still roped off with yellow caution tape, and I say to her, "Well, I just got my driveway done." She responded by saying, "Yeah, I can see that, but it looks dry to me. My dad said that asphalt doesn't take as long as concrete." Well, when she said that, I just smile and I go back to watering my plants. She then looks at me and says, "You can park your car on it right now." Well, after hearing just about enough of this and being clearly annoyed, I take a deep breath and I say the following: drying and curing aren't exactly the same. I won't be parking on it for a few more days. She then looks at me and says, "No, you need to do it right now. There's nowhere else for me to park. What am I supposed to do?" And it's about right then and there that my eyes started twitching, because there's no way this little girl was going to tell me what I need to do. So I clenched my teeth and I said, "What about your service road?" This entitled brat said, "Well, my parents park back there. There's no room." So I looked at her and I said, "Well, I don't know what to tell you. I wish you an ounce of luck." When I said this, the poor child turned a few shades of red and stomped back across the street. I'm not one of those older millennials who think Gen Z are entitled babies, but what in the world was that? And in case you're wondering, I work from home. I did all my grocery shopping and errand running a few days ago, and I have no plans on leaving the house or my spot again until at least Wednesday. So until then, I guess she's just gonna have to suffer. Oh man, that is some awful entitled behavior. Like the fact that she was demanding you to move it right then and there, like that is some stupid behavior, and it's like, dude, who emboldened you to act like that? Someone in the comments of that post actually made a really funny comment. They said you should make a point of parking on the street for the rest of the summer, simply out of spite. And honestly, if I was in your shoes, I would highly consider it, because this behavior was completely uncalled for. An entitled couple refused to clean up the house they're getting evicted from, as I'm literally offering them nearly $4,000 to just clean up and get out, avoiding the eviction process altogether if they simply comply and do their part. But instead, they refuse to do so, even going as far as saying that if I don't give them the money, they're gonna blow up my car, leaving me no choice but to watch as they get evicted. Here's how it went down. When I was a property shepherd for banks that foreclosed on properties, I was often asked to see if the occupants would accept money in exchange for surrendering the property in clean, intact condition and just skipping the eviction process altogether. I had nothing to do with the foreclosure or eviction, and they used me because the lawyers charge hundreds of dollars an hour for that kind of thing. So they prepared the offer, I presented it, and if they said yes, the bank sent me a check. I inspected the house, and if it was clean and intact, I handed over the check, no problem. Now, it's important to note, there was an eviction clock running. If I did not report that they had complied with the agreement, the eviction would proceed. They did not stop that process unless I was successful. So I was helpless to grant extra time to move out beyond what the agreement says. I would say to them, for example, listen, the agreement says to be out by the 14th. You are working hard, the bank is closed. I can come back first thing in the morning, and if you're done, I'll release the check and I'll tell the bank that you complied. Well, in this particular incident, I was dealing with a couple in a 4,000 square foot house. They had been fighting the foreclosures, then fighting the eviction, and the bank and lawyers were just getting sick of them. So I delivered the offer, $3,500 to be out in 2 weeks. It was explicitly clear that I was not from the bank, nor was I from the lawyer's office, but they showed up in my office anyways and tried to convince us to sell them the house. You know, the house which was not for sale, which they couldn't afford or they wouldn't be facing eviction, which also the house wasn't even ours. They didn't like any of those truths and then said we had better start checking under our car before starting it up, and then they stormed out. They wanted the money, and I always did what little I could to help the people make the deadline. I always offered offered to come by a few days early and point out what needed to be clean. Normal wear and tear? No problem. Stained carpet? Well, this isn't a security deposit, so unless it was a fresh, intentional stain, I just didn't care. Now, missing fixtures is a problem. Same with unswept floors or bags of rotting food in the garage. I think you get the picture. I went over for a pre-inspection and it was not even close to being ready. I pointed out what needed to happen. They asked if they could have the check now to hire cleaners, and they would totally have it ready in time. Being ugly and not stupid, I declined and said I would see them on the day that they agreed to. Well, I showed up and they had not cleaned up anything since my previous visit, but they demanded the check anyways. They worked hard to come up with excuses. They were tired, after saying they were going to unalive me with my car exploding. They needed the money for the down payment on another house. Won't you please do us a favor? We'll do anything for the check except clean. Well, after doing everything I can, I marked them as non-compliant and I left, returning the check to the lawyer's office. A week later, the lawyer's office told me I was free to take possession of the house and start my process. There was still lots of trash, there was grime everywhere, many missing light fixtures, but best of all, they had taken all of the towel racks and toilet paper holders, ripping them straight out of the wall, along with significant chunks of drywall. They sure taught me a lesson by damaging a house that wasn't even mine, and for skipping out on 3 hours of cleaning, they lost out on $3,500, even though they deserve that money for being stressed out. Wow, these people are idiots. Like, seriously, all they had to do was clean for 3 hours and they would have gotten paid almost $4,000 just to get out of the house. Like, dude, what are you doing? This is an easy paycheck. You could easily take the time and just get that done and take the money and run. It's bad enough you're already about to get evicted. Why not just make the process easier and be like, okay, I'm gonna bounce and I'm out of here. Like, that really would have solved everything in this situation. So yeah, these entitled people are complete morons. Because this is such an easy barrier of entry, it's honestly not even funny. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My Airbnb guest treated my property like hers, moving things around and acting like an obnoxious idiot at all hours of the night. So I decided to get some petty revenge by getting my neighbors involved in a way that literally scared her off. Here's how we did it. Okay, so I've been renting a detached guest house behind my home for a couple of years now. It's a quiet little unit with a private entrance and a tiny patio, just enough space for 1 or 2 people. I live in a fairly quiet neighborhood with older neighbors who love their peace and quiet, especially in the evenings. It's not a party area at all, and I make that clear in my Airbnb listing. I specify no parties, no loud music, and quiet hours start at 10 o'clock sharp. I even bolded that in the check-in instructions. Now, most guests are respectful. Some even leave thank you notes or folded towels. Well, a woman we will call Lily booked for a 4-night stay, saying that she was in town for a relaxing solo trip and maybe brunch with friends. When she checked in, she was super bubbly. It was the kind of fake nice where everything is literally amazing, and every answer I gave got a, "Oh, you're so sweet." I showed her around and I reminded her of the quiet hours, and she smiled and said, "Oh, I totally get it. I need the quiet too." Well, the first night at around 11 o'clock p.m., I started hearing laughing and clinking glasses through my bedroom window. It wasn't blaring music, but their voices were loud enough to keep me from sleeping and the other neighbor. I checked the security camera footage at the gate entrance, and I saw 3 women in the guest house patio area with drinks in hand. I knocked on the fence gate to get her attention, and I politely reminded her of the 10 o'clock p.m. quiet hours. Lily then acted shocked, saying, "Oh my god, is it really that late? We're just catching up, We'll keep it down." But they didn't keep it down. But not wanting to start a war, I let it slide for the night. The next day at around noon, I noticed that she had moved 2 of my potted plants off the guest patio and into my garden space, which was right into a decorative flower bed. These were ceramic pots I'd planted myself, and she just dragged them around like they were her own decor. So I walked over and I asked her, "Hey, did you move these pots?" And she replied by saying, "Oh yeah, the feng shui of your patio is super off. I was going to take pictures for my lifestyle blog and I needed it to feel more balanced." I then politely reminded her again that this wasn't her property, and I asked her not to move anything else. She just replied by saying, "You should really mention that in the rules." I then let out a deep sigh and she replied, "Okay, wow, you are super strict. I've never had this kind of experience in a rental before." And at that point, I decided to get a little bit petty. That evening, I paid a casual visit to 2 of my elderly neighbors. We'll call them Sandy and Florence. I mentioned offhandedly that the current guest was a bit disruptive, loud chatting at night, and moving things around. And that's all I had to say. Well, the next morning at exactly 8 o'clock in the morning, Sandy and Florence just happened to be walking by with their dogs right past the guest unit. They were talking loudly about city ordinances. And it's there that I overheard them say, "Well, technically, after 2 noise complaints, the city could flag the property for short-term rental violations." Florence then added, "And you know what? It's so rude when people move planters that just don't belong to them. It's like stealing landscape art." Well, at this point, Lily came out while they were nearby and awkwardly pretended to scroll on her phone, looking visibly deeply uncomfortable. That evening, she messaged me through the application and said, "Hey, I think I'm going to be cutting my trip short. Can I check out early tomorrow morning?" I then replied with a friendly, "Of course, let me know if you need anything before you go." And you know what? She was gone by 7 o'clock in the morning the next day, and I've honestly never been more grateful for my neighbors. Yeah, this is one of those situations where it's like she clearly didn't read the rules, or she didn't care enough to try and follow the rules. Because honestly, I don't care if you're going to be going to like an Airbnb or like a hotel. If they have specific hours you need to be quiet, then guess what? You should probably be quiet. So truly, you have some great neighbors who really came in clutch to scare this lady off, because Lily's attitude and behavior was completely out of line. My wife's uncle acts like the family culture police, and I'm honestly so done with it, as he actively goes out of his way to critique every single woman in our family. Here's what's going on. Okay, so this has been bugging me for a while, and I just need to vent. My wife's uncle has somehow made it his life's mission to critique every single woman who marries into the family. Not in a, "oh, here's some advice I can give you" kind of way. No, he straight up monitors people. If a wife isn't cooking enough, dressing modestly enough, serving her in-laws daily, or being the picture-perfect housewife by his outdated standards, then he makes snide comments or lectures them, like he's running a finishing school for the 1950s. It's always subtle at first. "Oh, you don't cook every day?" Or he'll say, "Back in our time, women didn't talk like that." But then it would escalate from there. If someone has a career or speaks their mind, or God forbid, doesn't cater to their in-laws 24/7, he claims they're single-handedly destroying family values. He once even said that a wife should be grateful her husband allows her to work. And if people push back or ignore his judgment, he sulks. Full-on cold shoulders, guilt-tripping, acting all hurt like he's the victim. He absolutely despises his sister's daughter-in-law, who is an engineer at a reputable company, earns a lot of money, stays long hours, and visits her family for the weekend, which doesn't align with his vision. But then here's the kicker. He still expects to be invited to every wedding, dinner, and get-together, like he didn't just alienate half the family with his behavior. You can invite him 15 minutes before the event and he will still be there. At one event, he claimed that giving the new generation high-quality education is why no one is having kids, and everyone is just working too much. And this is coming from a guy that stayed in one company for 40 years, never planned for his family's future, never properly educated his kids, and is now mooching off his poor son that is paying for the entire household of 10 people. Everyone sees this and everyone complains about it behind closed doors, but no one wants to be the one to cause drama because people would justify that he is old, so he keeps getting away with it. And honestly, it just makes every gathering just a little bit more exhausting. Yeah, that's one of those relatives where it's like, okay, we're related by name only, but that's about it. Like, I can't stand people who act like that, and I would actively make sure to avoid them, or if given the chance, correct them and shut them down. I don't care if they're old. Congratulations, you're old. But guess what? You're going to adapt to the times. And if that means me correcting you and saying, hey, you're being awful right now and what you're saying is messed up, then so be it. I don't care if I hurt feelings. I'm absolutely going to call that crap out. I've never understood why people let others slide just because of their age, as if the terrible things they're saying are somehow acceptable because they're old and maybe they don't understand. But that's a load of crap in my opinion. That's a cop-out, and it's just people not wanting to like correct someone who clearly needs correcting. So yeah, this guy's an absolute piece of garbage, and I don't blame you for trying to avoid him. Am I the jerk for not congratulating my friend on publishing a book? Because right now she's pissed off at me and I seriously just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, so a friend of mine recently self-published a children's book on Amazon. She made a big announcement on social media about how excited she was to start this new chapter in her life as an author. She also texted me about it, and I responded that it was really cool and that I would buy a copy when I could afford it. I also asked what the story was about, and she told me that I'd have to buy it to find out. Well, later, my husband saw the cover of it and was curious if it was AI generated. I then asked my friend who her illustrator was, and she said she used Canva AI. Now, personally, I really don't care either way, so I just didn't reply to that message right away. A few hours later, she followed up asking why I had asked. Now, I wasn't on my phone, so I didn't see it right away, but when I didn't respond again, she sent another message back, basically saying, "Are you going to reply or not?" I told her I was just curious. I didn't want to mention that someone else thought it looked like AI, since I felt that would come across as rude. She then sent a long message along the lines of, "I already have one friend criticizing my book, and then there's you. No congratulations. Just asking about the artwork as if you're trying to find something negative. So why don't you be honest about why you're asking?" I replied back by saying, "Please calm down. I can't afford to buy your book right now. When people are proud of something, they usually enjoy talking about it. So I thought asking questions was a way to show I was interested." Well, she didn't respond after that. Later on, her husband, who I work with, mentioned that she was upset that I didn't congratulate her. Well, to make matters worse, I have no choice but to be at their house soon for an overnight visit, and I'm already dreading any potential awkwardness. Should I approach her once I'm there, or just camp it out in the guest room and just kind of hide until the last minute to avoid any potential conversation? I genuinely wasn't trying to downplay her new book. The first thing that came to my mind was to ask questions to show support support since I couldn't buy it. But now I'm wondering if I was unintentionally dismissive. So seriously, am I the jerk here? Because right now I don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk, but I guarantee you're not the only person asking, hey, who's your illustrator? Like, I get it, AI is slowly getting better, and pretty soon you won't be able to tell what's real artwork and what's not. So in my opinion, I think as humans, we should really band together and support artists instead of giving into this kind of crap. Just because it's cheaper doesn't mean it's better. And the fact that you guys are picking up on that is proof that you are not the only people who are like saying something about this. So no, you're not the jerk. This is clearly a problem she has to figure out, because personally, if you use AI in this capacity, you deserve the criticism. An entitled idiot gets his car towed twice from our retail store parking lot, and every single time he has the audacity to act like this is somehow our fault. Here's what happened. Several years ago, I was a manager at a big box retail store in a busy part of the city. The neighborhood was mixed commercial and residential, and also a tourist area. Parking was at a premium, and almost all of it was paid parking, including street parking. We had a small customer parking lot, maybe 15 spots in front, that was free. We had big clear signs in front of every single spot that clearly spelled out that the parking was for customers only, 2 hours maximum, and that your car would be towed if you left it. We were actually pretty lenient and only towed cars that egregiously violated the rules. Well, cut to Mr. Entitled, who got his car towed twice. I arrived at work one morning and noticed a distinctive car that I knew had been in our lot the day before. Even the night crew manager said it had been there all night. Well, considering this to qualify as egregious, I simply had to tow it. Almost 36 hours later, the owner arrived wanting to know where his car was. I only heard about this part since I was off, but the manager on duty directed him to the tow company number and basically told him, too bad, so sad, don't do it again. Well, a month or so later, I see the exact same car in our lot again. I didn't do anything that day, but the following day was Saturday, so I flagged it for the opening manager to check. And when it was still there in the morning, the manager had to tow it. Fast forward to Monday morning and I'm doing opening tasks when a man wearing a suit and the reddest face of thwarted rage pounds on the door. It's Mr. Entitled again, here to collect his car that he left on our lot 4 days before. He seriously wants to know where his car is, but it's like, did he read the sign? He wants to know who authorized towing his car, and you know what? That would be me. He then simply doesn't believe I'm the manager, but that's not my problem. He then wants to know, how dare I treat a customer like this? And it's like, excuse me? You are not a customer. You are a parking freeloader. He was then sent on his way with a number for the tow company and how to spell my direct manager's name. Well, to make a long story short, I never saw his car in the lot ever again, which clearly taught him the lesson that no, you can't park your car here and expect to have it a few days later. Wow, this guy literally just doesn't learn lessons. His car got towed twice and he's still trying to be like, wow, where's my car? Who's the manager? Who did this? It's like, dude, you did this. I didn't do this. I don't want to tow your car, but you're leaving it overnight. So yeah, this guy was super entitled and his attitude was completely awful. Am I the jerk for forcing my roommate to let me buy out our kitchen table as he was trying to take it while he was moving out? Because right now I feel like a jerk for the way I handled this and I'm honestly not sure what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I just had a huge blowout fight with one of my roommates who I will call Bob for the sake of the story. Bob is moving out and they are taking the table, but this table is seriously my most cherished possession. I found this table after searching through estate sale sites. Bob and I went together to get it. Bob, my other roommate John, and I split it 3 ways for $40 each. Bob later sent us a text saying his dad is buying the table for us. He then sent back our money without asking if we were all right with that arrangement, and this was over a year ago. Well, about a month after we buy the table, Bob and I got into a huge fight. He said repeatedly when touring apartments that they would pay for the Wi-Fi, but now that we've signed the lease, he says that he won't. Well, I eventually cave and I just pay to keep the peace. And trust me, this will be important later on. Well, cut to a month ago and Bob tells us they're moving out 3 months earlier than our lease ends. And it's completely fine by me, like good riddance. As I said earlier, I love this table. I asked Bob, okay, well, what will you be taking with you? And Bob walks around the apartment and talks us through every item he will be taking, and the table is not one of them. A week then goes by and we check back in on the progress of his move out. And I ask him explicitly, are you taking the table? And he says no to both John and I. And I think to myself, okay, wonderful. Well, a week after that, John tells me that Bob is taking the table. I text Bob asking to buy them out, and he says he will get back to me. I then follow up the next day and they tell me they're taking the table because getting a new one is too expensive. Now, for context, Bob comes from wealth and I do not. Money is not an issue for Bob. I had a suspicion they were going to pull something like this, so I planned ahead. To put it simply, unless both John and I agreed to take over the lease, Bob is stuck with $3,000 in rent over the remaining 3 months of the lease and on the hook for his new apartment that they had already signed on for. Again, money is not an issue for Bob. Well, he refused my offer to buy him out and my offer to buy him a new table. So I tell him his options. Either let me buy the table like we agreed, or I'm refusing to let him off our lease. Think Things then turned into a heated back and forth. I then pointed out how he did the same thing with the Wi-Fi when we first moved in, to which he called me immature. Eventually he caved in, letting me buy the table for $275, which by the way is still far below the actual value of the table. And you know what? John is pissed at me for this. He backed up that Bob did say he would leave the table, but said that it wasn't binding and ultimately it's Bob's table. So sure, I got the table, but honestly it feels like it came at a cost. So am I the jerk for the way I handled this? Because right now I don't know what to do. No, I don't think you're the jerk at all. Bob literally was trying to steal a table that he's like, no, I'm not gonna take it. Like, that's super frustrating. Like, are you kidding me right now? At least buy a new table in your new apartment. Don't take the one that we have. And for him to be like, oh yeah, I basically own this. It's mine. I'm gonna take it with me. Like, no, that's super obnoxious. We're not playing that game. Now, do I think it's a good idea to basically hold a metaphorical grenade over his like future apartment by saying you won't let him out of the lease unless he buys the table? Well, no, I don't think that's okay. I think that really is a messed up thing to do, even though I understand your reasoning. But it's like, man, there had to have been like a better solution here, because that is like some crazy stuff. But overall, I think with all things considered, I don't think you're the jerk here, and I think Bob absolutely had it coming, because what he was trying to do was incredibly inappropriate. Today, I had a customer who literally acted like Jekyll and Hyde, because the second they got food in their system, they went from an absolute monster at my restaurant to the sweetest old lady you would ever meet in your life, proving to me that some people, when they're hungry, are the angriest people on planet Earth. Here's how it happened. Okay, to start things out, it was Juneteenth on the weekend. Now, I don't know if it's relevant, but a lot of our normal crowd must have made it into a 4-day vacation and left town, because the rest that were left behind were just completely different. More exaggerated, I suppose. The nice tables were overly polite, and the bad tables were extra bad. So this one lady comes in, and she first complains of the hostess for daring to lead her to a table when she really wanted a booth. But then, literally about 2 minutes after me taking her drink and appetizer order, she waves down a manager to complain about how they're not here yet, then flags me down to complain some more about how I need to pay more attention to her, and about how her calamari still isn't here, despite the fact that it needs time to cook. Like, really? Her dinner then comes out, and she complains some more about how she wasn't finished with her appetizer. She said to me, didn't they train you? Don't you think a person might want to finish their appetizer before getting their meal? Oh, and between all this, she's flagging down other servers and complaining at them about whatever. And by the way, this is all in the span of 15 minutes. At this point, I'm ready to strangle this lady. I grab every floor manager on duty and I explain the situation. But after finishing her appetizer, she suddenly turns into this sweet, polite old lady. We had no further problems and even took care of me on the tip. Now, I've seen cases of people getting angry when they're hungry, but good God, I've never seen people do a complete 180 like this before. Well, I mean, I have, but it's just always been in the opposite direction. Customers being fine to deal with until one thing doesn't go their way, and then they flip out will always baffle me. Yeah, I've dealt with hangry people before when I was like a server and worked in the restaurant business, and they are the worst. Because for starters, they will never apologize for the way they acted, and they're gonna sit there and be like, oh wow, this was great, thank you so much. Meanwhile, the first 10 minutes were them being a nightmare to you. And you wanna say like, yeah, I was trained properly. Did your parents raise you right? Because clearly they did a bad job. So I'm right there with the original poster, because I can't stand people who act this way. My bosses are constantly stealing from the store we work at, leaving me incredibly frustrated and very annoyed that I have to deal with them. But eventually, karma was on my side, as I finally got the evidence I needed to get revenge on these jerks by getting them fired once and for all. And I'm honestly so happy I did it, because these guys absolutely deserved it. Here's how it happened. So I was a manager at a small chain grocery store several years ago. It was a crappy job in the bad part of town, and I was working 50 plus hours a week on salary, so no overtime, and I was attending college on top of that. Needless to say, I was super tired. Our store had 3 managers. The store manager, who we will call Dylan, the assistant store manager, who I will call Jim, and a third level manager, who would be me in this situation. Now, Dylan was an okay guy, sometimes a jerk, but usually easy to get along with, and a thief, even though I could not prove it. He also scheduled me to work nights like 3 days a week, and he wouldn't budge on that. So I had to deal with the crappy lunatic customers that only came in at night all the time. It was extremely frustrating, and it wore down greatly on my sanity. Now, Jim was a complete moron with room temperature IQ. He did a halfway job, thought he was some kind of alpha because he drove a motorcycle sometimes, and he was also a thief, even though I could also not prove this in any way. When I would come into work in the evening after class, employees would always vent to me about how Jim was bossing them around while he sat on his butt all day. And unfortunately, there was not a lot I could do except for like offer a listening ear and laugh and just cut up with them while finishing our shifts. I was usually the only manager working in the evenings, but Jim and I had scheduled one night to work together on a project that needed both of us to be there. And this was probably rearranging shelves or new product placement or something like that. We were getting ready to leave, and I was going to take my cash drawer to the back to count it, started, but it's then that Jim asked me to wait a minute because he needed to buy some packaged or butchered meat for dinner. And of course, this is no problem. He then came back with a 5-pound package of beef with a ridiculously low price, like $3 or something like that. And it had a sticker with a correct but different item description we didn't use. For reference, I ran the cash registers a lot, and I was very familiar with our products. Well, I didn't say a word, and I just rang him up. When we walked away, I reprinted a copy of his receipt, and I stuck it in my pocket, and we just closed up for the night. Now, I was scheduled to open the store the next day on Saturday morning, so when I arrived, I walked to the butcher room to investigate. I then found a plastic wrapper from that package of beef with the original price tag in the trash can, so I went ahead and I grabbed it. I also found that the pricing scale that prints the price stickers had that wrong label still selected, and he had manually keyed in a dramatically lower price per pound, so I grabbed one of those stickers as well. Then I walked to the DVR in the manager's office, and I wrote down the timestamps of the footage where Jim took the meat off the shelf into the butcher room and walked out to my register where he bought it. I then stashed the evidence in my locker until Dylan came in at around noon, and that's when I showed him the evidence. He then got in touch with our district manager, who we will call Rocky, and this is where Rocky called Jim the next day and asked him to come to the store. After a short behind closed doors meeting, Jim was fired with cause, so he had no unemployment benefits. Shortly afterwards, I was promoted to assistant store manager, meaning that justice was served and nobody missed that loser. Well, a few months later, we got a piece of mail from St. Jude's Children's Hospital. It was a fundraiser package to collect quarters for leukemia research. Now, I thought it was a great idea, so I had the cashiers ask for 25-cent donations to put in the little cardboard stands they sent us. After the program ended, we collected about $250 in donations. I kept the donations in the safe, and the instructions in the fundraiser said Western Union was the way to send the donation in, and that was down the road from us, so it was easiest. Dylan took the money to Western Union, and when he returned, I asked him for a receipt, but it's here that he said he didn't get one. Now, when he said that, I was suspicious. A few weeks later, we got a letter in the mail from St. Jude, and it was a thank you letter for our generous donation of $50. That jerk stole money that could have gone to saving a kid's life. And trust me when I say this, I was raging inside. Roughly a year later, Dylan and I were working on another project at night. I had finished cleaning the floors and noticed that I had not seen him for a while. I was looking for him to ask if he was ready to leave, and I heard the door to the dairy cooler open, so I figured he's stocking some milk or something like that. The door was only slightly open, so when I opened the door, I walked in to talk to him, and I saw him hovering over a shopping cart filled with groceries that he was putting into shopping bags. Now, when he saw me, he was startled and started talking to me about some random thing as he hurried out of the cooler. I acted like nothing happened, and we closed up the store and just went home. Well, Dylan was scheduled to open the store the next day, and when I arrived at around noon, he went home shortly afterwards. But when I went to the dairy cooler, the shopping cart was gone. I pulled the DVR footage and I saw him arrive at work about an hour early and park in his truck at the front door, which was really unusual. He then rolled his shopping cart out of the cooler and over to his truck where he loaded all of the groceries. He then locked the doors and drove off and came back when he normally would to open the store. Since all the items were in bags, you couldn't see them, so technically I couldn't prove he didn't buy them. That is, unless I watched a crap ton of footage and followed him around the store on the DVR. But there was a glimmer of hope. One thing he stole was a jumbo pack of paper towels, so it would not fit in a bag. This particular brand of paper towel was also overpriced, so customers had not bought a single one, and there was only one pack missing from the display. I needed just a little bit more evidence though. I then got the barcode number from the paper towels, and I ran a report on the computer for any transactions the entire week that contained that number, but it showed that no results had ever been found. And this is exactly what I need. This was perfect. I printed that and I wrote down the DVR timestamps. Well, by coincidence, our area manager, who we will call Rod, who also worked underneath Rocky, happened to show up that same day. I then showed Rod the evidence, and you can probably guess what happened after that. And no, Dylan didn't get his unemployment benefits either. Rocky then hired someone to replace Dylan instead of promoting me, but shortly before then, I had finished my degree, so I started a real career a few months later, and I got out of that crap hole store once and for all. Oh man, I honestly would lose my mind if I was dealing with a bunch of thieves every day, especially people who are supposed to be my manager. It's like, dude, are you supposed to be setting the example here? Like showing people that no, we don't steal around here. I'm gonna be a good manager and do my job, etc. Like the first guy was changing prices and the other one just straight up stole groceries. Like both of them are idiots. How do they not know that there's cameras everywhere? There's no blind spots you can take advantage of. Like this is some seriously stupid criminal behavior. These guys absolutely deserve to get fired. So to the original poster, good for you for getting these people in trouble, because dealing with thieves like this on a daily basis would drive me absolutely insane. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/subscribe /submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My stepdad literally canceled my college fund and instead gave it to his biological son, forcing me to now go to community college instead and work 2 jobs just to pay for everything. Things are so bad that this guy literally tried to claim that I broke up the family, even though we both know he's the one that did that. Here's what's happening. Okay, I'm 19 years old, and when my mom married my stepdad 7 years ago, he legally adopted me. He made a big show of saying that I was his daughter too, that he loved me like his own and all this other garbage. And when I was 13 years old, they told me there was a college fund for me started by my mom and added to over time by the both of them. Well, 2 months before my high school graduation, I found out that the fund was gone. It turns out my stepdad emptied the account without my mom knowing and gave the entire thing to his biological son for a private sports academy. When I confronted him, he said, "Oh, he needs it more. He has a future. You'll figure it out." Well, my mom was furious and filed for divorce. She opened a fraud case, but it's still unresolved. I'm going to community college right now, working 2 jobs and paying for it out of pocket. I haven't spoken to him ever since then, and he occasionally sends emails telling me that I broke the family. But honestly, no dude, this is something that you did all by yourself, because trust me, I had nothing to do with that. Oh man, I am so sorry you had to deal with that. That is so unfair. Imagine having a stepdad being like, "Oh, I love you so much, you're my future," and then he turns around and takes all of your college money and says, "Whoops, gave it to my real son, see ya." Like, dude, what are you doing? You're such a fraud. He literally scammed you and your mom, and that is just so awful. You guys do not deserve that. I really hope your mom wins this fraud situation, because what your stepdad did to you is unacceptable. And the fact that this college fund was literally just like a carrot on a string is just so messed up. An entitled jerk thinks that he's above other customers by literally demanding that the cashier check out him and only him first and foremost, as he then decides to walk out of the store in protest because he doesn't get exactly what he wants. Here's how it happened. Okay, so today was my first time seeing an entitled customer in real life, and this incident took place earlier today at a Dollar General. I was looking around for some Pokemon packs for my collection and decided to look inside this Dollar General, but I didn't find any in the toy section, so I decided to go up to the front. Being in the United States on July 3rd, there was a rather long line of older people with things like paper plates and plastic utensils, but there was one customer of note who we will call Kevin for the sake of the story. Kevin is an elderly man looking to be in his early 70s or late 60s, and he has to walk with some sort of cane. Kevin was second in line at the time, and the one cashier working the entire store had finished ringing up the woman first in line. She decided to buy ice, so the cashier told Kevin something along the lines of, "I'm sorry, sir, but you'll need to wait while I do something for her." Well, Kevin said to her, "I'm not waiting one dang second. I've been waiting in this line for 2 hours, and I will not wait any longer." Now, the cashier, not letting Kevin get his way, replied by saying, "Sir, she bought ice and I need to unlock it for her. It will only take about 30 seconds. Kevin responded by saying, "I don't care. I've been waiting here long enough. Ring up my items now or I'll leave them here and leave this place immediately." The cashier then said without missing a beat, "I'm not gonna let you talk to me like that. I need to get this lady her ice, so please wait." After that, Kevin just starts walking towards the door without his cane. He needs to be reminded by the guy behind him that he left his cane there, and he angrily grabs it and walks off. The cashier later said that she'd been working at Dollar General for 3 years, and she had people doing things like throwing items on the ground, so she was used to entitled people. The cashier and other customers were very nice. So to the cashier, if you're reading this, thank you for not letting this entitled man get what he wants. Yeah, this is just some weird, cringy behavior. Like, all he had to do was wait 30 seconds and this would have been taken care of. But instead, he decided to be a weirdo and just walk out as if that's doing anything. Because at the end of all of this, he literally just didn't get any of his items he was trying to purchase, quite literally wasting his and everybody else's time in the process. Am I the jerk for not paying for new tires for my sister's car after using it for literally only 3 months? Because right now she's claiming that I owe her, and at this point I honestly just don't know what to do. Here's how it went down. Okay, to start things out, I have a really old car, but I'm currently saving it for my brother because he just got his license and cars are expensive to get right now. I drive a lot for work and I am in college that is pretty far away, so I travel a lot during the semester. My car's been having issues when I travel far, so I've been scared to drive it far. My sister has 2 cars. One she got when she needed a car and the other because she wanted it. Now, we agreed that I could use one of her cars. I don't make much money, so she said I only need to pay half the insurance and I'd be responsible if I broke anything. Before I started driving the car, my dad said the back tires needed to be changed. changed. They never got replaced, but the car has been fine. I've had it for maybe 3 or 4 months, and now my sister's moving out and will take the car with her. Now that she's moving out and the semester is finally over, and I also had to do some summer course, my sister is saying that I have to change the tires. But I become annoyed with it, so I was like, whatever, and I'll change the back 2 tires just to get them to stop bothering me. But she started yelling at me that I have to do all 4 because I had the vehicle and it was the principle of it that I had to change all 4 because I used the car for 4 months. And she's the one that gave my car an oil change when she used it. And on that note, I've literally told her I can pay her back for the oil change because it is far less expensive. So we end up getting into a heated argument, and she's like cursing at me and everything that apparently I never said thank you, but it's like, yeah, well, I did, but I don't think I'm like super nice about it. Like, I believe I said something along the lines of like, all right, cool, thanks. But she got these tires 3 years ago. Pretty much all of this damage is from her because my 4 months does not equal to her 2 years and 6 months of usage. I personally believe I shouldn't even have to pay for the 2 of them, but we kind of agree with me paying for 2 and her paying for the other 2, but I still would need to get all 4 changed at the same time. But now she's saying because I won't pay for all 4, I owe her the other half of the insurance that I haven't paid. And you know what? I told her no, I will not be doing that. So she said I can't use her car anymore. And I just laughed in her face and I was like, okay, Mr. Tough Guy, which I'm not gonna lie was immature, but she got me so frustrated. Anyways, I took my car back and I was gonna see if I can take it in the next week to get it changed. I then told my boyfriend and he is really upset because he feels my family always takes advantage of me. He thinks I should text her and tell her I won't pay for all the tires or the insurance. He says I shouldn't be responsible for the tires when they were already bad when I started using the car. He also says I never agreed to pay for all 4 tires or the extra insurance, and the car will be gone soon anyways. So honestly, am I the jerk in this situation? Because right now I seriously just don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk, your sister's an idiot. She literally is the one who destroyed those tires, and now she's trying to be like, oh, you need to pay for them. You used them for 4 months, that's on you. And it's like, no, that's not on me. Are you nuts? How am I responsible for something you literally caused for years, all because I used it for what, 3 months? And the fact that she's trying to be like, oh, well, I changed your oil once. It's like, lady, I can get that done for like, what, 25 bucks at some places? Like, why are you trying to act like this is a big deal? Meanwhile, getting new tires is like hundreds of dollars. It's not even comparable. Like, she's out of her mind if she thinks it is. So no, you're not the jerk. This is honestly so weird and stupid in my opinion, because if anyone's paying for those tires, it's absolutely your sister and not you. My boss tried to claim that I was being too controlling with the menus, despite the fact that I was literally just trying to improve them. So I decided to maliciously comply by literally backing out and stopping all the progress I made for the restaurant, causing the entire place to fall into disrepair and then eventually close down. Here's how it happened. Okay, so this happened about 10 years ago when I worked at a restaurant. The place had only been running under current management for a few months and had an unconventional working culture. The boss spent as much time as he could upstairs working on other projects, and staff did not have clearly defined duties, but we all chipped in wherever their abilities allowed. I was hired as a bar manager, but I also helped clearing tables, cleaning, maintenance, doing administrative stuff, and anything else that may have cropped up. And overall, we were encouraged to have creative ideas. Now, for the most part, everyone was quite happy, but when the boss did come down, he could be pretty stressy and irritable, especially if anything went wrong. Also, sometimes there were gaps or flaws in the smooth operation of business, as there were things that no one had skills for or didn't think of, and their roles weren't organized thoroughly. Well, at some point, I decided I was going to tackle an issue that was bothering me. The menus were pretty haphazard and not very professional. The menus were stored on a shared document that any staff member could edit and print. The menu would just be a black text on a piece of A4 paper. Now, staff had varying degrees of computer literacy, and the menus would end up totally messy, full of typos and containing many different fonts and formatting styles. Also, the boss would frequently ask the chefs to change up the menu choices, as he thought it would get boring, or he would buy different stock on a deal that needed to be used, and nobody would bother coordinating with the kitchen to check that the menu matched what was available. So naturally, there would be a lot of silly situations that arose once customers' orders had been taken to the kitchen, and waiting staff would have to go back and get customers to order something else. Basically, they would find issues by trial and error during service, and only after this, they would alter the shared document and print new menus out. However, it could be very hard to get time for editing and printing during a busy shift, so the staff would often deliver erroneous menus to the customer, along with a verbal list of alterations and additions. Anyways, despite being bar staff, I decided to do something about the menu problems. My motivation was that I love my job, I love the team, and I love the restaurant. I wanted customers to have a good time and could see there were easy ways to make the system work a lot better for everyone. Firstly, I started arriving earlier. That way, I had time to discuss menu availability with the chefs and do all the editing auditing that was necessary before service started. If we had a quiet spell, I started training the waiting staff to edit menus as well and resolve any formatting discrepancies. It was not altogether easy to get everyone on board, as they were all used to the haphazard way of doing things, but they were a good bunch and they humored me. In addition, I started working on prettier menus, and in my own time, I even did it at home. Now, I'm far from being a publishing expert, but I had an old version of Word that I was very familiar with, and I spent an awful lot of time tweaking and messing around to produce, if I have to say, some very pretty folded card menus with little designs and borders and nice colors. I knew these menus would not transfer well through the shared document and the work printer, and the formatting would likely go kaput. So rather than tackling the regular daily menu that everyone would need to be able to edit and print at work, I focused on special menus that were one-off events. For instance, our upcoming Valentine's night and Mother's Day menus, and the steak and curry night menus, which we rarely changed. The boss had decided on the dishes for these nights according to his whims, so I was working on his draft. I showed him the nice menus I was working on to the chefs, and I got them on board with collaborating to make sure our actual offerings and our menu matched up. During which process, we found a few catering difficulties with the dishes the boss had proposed, so we worked to find something agreeable to both the boss and the kitchen, and had everyone working on the same plans. I then found an old wooden display rack in a storeroom and fixed it front of house to display the special menus, and we handed them out to all the customers as advertising. Now, at this point, service was running much smoother due to the extra effort on the daily menus. Much less stress, happier customers, happier kitchen. The boss didn't really notice much, as he was never usually around to see the mayhem. The Valentine's Day and Mother's Day events were roaring successes. We had full house, everything went like clockwork, and everyone was happy. And we had loads of excellent reviews for these nights. Time rolled on, and I worked with the kitchen to launch a daily kids pick and mix menu. And you know what? The customers loved it. Then there was Christmas Day, which again was a great success. Of course, I'm not claiming all the success for myself. Our chefs made great food, and the staff were lovely, friendly, and hardworking. But I guess I didn't even realize until I did it how much the work on the menu would pull everything together. Soon it was time for Valentine's Day again, which was a really big night for us. And this is where a boss-shaped spanner got in the works and malicious compliance ensued. I had again produced a beautiful menu with a cupid on the front and a border of little red hearts. I would print them at home in my spare time at my own expense, as well as the other special menus, and keep the display unit stocked up. On the fateful day, I arrived at work and I see immediately that the boss is in a foul mood. It transpires that he wanted to give a Valentine's menu to someone, and there were none in the display rack. I have brought a bundle with me, and I also apologize for them running out, but he is still clearly unhappy. He then accuses me of trying to control the menus in order to make myself indispensable. He then complains that the pretty menus are not in the shared document. His tone is so mean, meaner than I've ever heard him, and it honestly really stung. I try to explain that the menus won't hold their formatting, but that the text-only version is available on the shared document. He says in that case, I shouldn't be developing them on my own computer. It should only be done on the business computer. Now, there's a lot I could have said to defend myself, and he clearly doesn't realize that it's not something I have time for during working hours, nor am I very adept with the software available at work. But I don't even want to bother explaining. He was so condescending, so accusatory over something I've done unpaid just to help out his business that I don't even want to engage with it. So I decide there and then never to have anything more to do with the menu. I share my Word document as requested, and that's the end of it. I run the bar and I clear the tables and I clean and fix stuff up. But I don't do anything on my own time, and especially not with menus. And before long, the display rack is empty. The waiting staff gradually slide back into their old ways of working. No one coordinates in the kitchen, service is frequently chaotic, and Mother's Day is slowly approaching. I see the boss's draft menu and I can see issues with it, so I decide to book that night off, and trust me, it was a total disaster. The next day, the boss is lamenting to me how embarrassing it was. He doesn't seem to realize at all that it had anything to do with me withdrawing my job protection racket. He's not mad at me, he just doesn't understand what went wrong. He says I'm lucky I wasn't there. A lot of stuff on the menu, you know, the black text printed on A4 paper, had not been available. The kitchen hadn't even seen the menu until the morning of the event and didn't know how to make the dishes or even have the equipment to do so. Christmas Day eventually arrives and it's even more of a disaster. The advertised menu doesn't tally up with what's served. The boss is getting stressed out and falls out with the staff, and customers are beyond disappointed. Over this last couple of months, my daughter was ill and I had to take a lot of time off. Actually, my boss is really good about my situation and even continues paying me, but eventually, I feel like it's better if I just leave. In the next months, the restaurant gets even more erratic and disorganized, and in less than a year, the business folds under. Not because I left, but because the boss is moody, which then the staff fall out with him, the service gets even more erratic, and the customers dwindle. But I do think leaving had some part to play, as I used to be quite good at thinking ahead, at organizing, and keeping the peace between the boss and the staff, because this boss caused a lot of problems. Wow, this guy literally is an idiot. It's almost like he just didn't want his restaurant to succeed at all. You're telling me he went after you, the person who's working off the clock, to make sure the menu actually looks doable? Like, I don't know about you, but that guy's an idiot, and he has no business sense to realize a valuable employee when he sees one. So honestly, good for you for improving that restaurant, but also good for you for getting out of there, because that guy was gonna drive it into the ground pretty much no matter what. An entitled pastor lies straight to my face, claiming that he has every right to take over a reserved spot at our park, claiming that he got permission from the people who actually reserved this spot by saying that they're good friends despite the fact that they've never met before, forcing me to prove this guy wrong and humiliate him in a way that he truly will never forget. Here's how it all went down. Okay, so I'm a ranger at a park that's very popular for outdoor picnicking and gatherings. Several of our picnic shelters are available for reservations, while others are always first come, first serve. Now, of course, until the group who paid for the reservation shows up, part of my job is to make sure that no one else tries to claim the shelter as their own. Well, one busy Saturday morning, I had to intervene when some random people started to gather at Shelter 2, which was reserved for someone who we will call Susie Smith. I directed them to another available area before they got too settled in. I did a lap of the park, assisted with some other camping logistics, and passed by Shelter 2 again. And this time a new group was setting up now, which was a huge affair. We're talking several dozen people, multiple coolers, food warmer trays, several big bags of charcoal, outdoor games, the works. I learned that they were also not part of Susie Smith's party and tried to redirect them to another area. But the gentleman in charge wanted to argue. He was the pastor of this church group, and they needed a large space like this one. I then explained the reservation system, and I pointed out the sign in case he had missed it. And then he decided to lie to me, and I hate lying. The man claimed he had spoken to Susie Smith and her party, and that she was done with the shelter for the day. Susie herself had given his church the go-ahead to take over the shelter. I explained that this seemed unlikely, as we had not yet heard from Miss Smith. If anything, the people he spoke to were likely the other group who had also been asked to leave shelter number 2, as it wasn't their reservation. Well, he denied it and doubled down that he had permission to use the shelter. Now that he knew Susie's name, he kept throwing it around like they were old pals. And with that, an idea formed. One that I knew would shut this guy down once and for all. I looked at him, I said, "Oh, all right, sir. I'm not going to argue with the pastor or deprive a church group of the best picnic spot in the park. I'm sure that you're telling me the truth. So you guys go ahead and set up and enjoy." And with that, he smiled. He had won. I then said, "But if Susie Smith and her party show up and your group is in the way, that's going to be a problem. It'll take forever for you to clear out and let them use the space they've paid for. So at that point, we would have to ask your group to pack up and leave the park for the day. If you're not confident that this space is truly yours, you might want to find somewhere else to barbecue." He then got mad and argued that I wasn't being fair. There was no reason to kick out his whole group. But I said to him, "Oh, I agree, sir. I'm sure that a good Christian pastor of a church wouldn't lie to me or try to take what someone else has paid for. And the only reason I'd kick you out would be if you lied to me. So you guys go ahead and enjoy. Unless, you know, there's a reason you shouldn't." Well, with that, I hopped in my cart and I drove away. A few minutes later, I saw that Shelter 2 was empty and his group had crowded around the last available picnic table in the furthest corner of the park. Soon after, Miss Smith called to reschedule her reservation, as her group would be unable to make it out that day. I then found the family who had first tried to set up at the shelter, and I let them know that it had just become available. And these were lovely people to deal with, especially in comparison to this crooked pastor. Oh man, good for you for putting this guy in his place. This really is so funny to me. Here you have a pastor of a Christian church trying to be like, "Oh yeah, we're allowed to be here. Susie allowed us to do it specifically. It's no big deal." But it's like, dude, this guy is literally lying through his teeth. Like, what a scumbag. You would think someone who's a leader of a church would be a better example, let alone try and uphold what they actually believe. Like, that is some scumbag behavior that absolutely deserves to get shut down. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. An entitled Karen calls the cops on me all because I wouldn't give up my seat at Starbucks, putting me in one of the weirdest situations I've probably ever been in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so I was once fixing a friend's phone at Starbucks. We both had drinks and hers was still there. She then ran out to grab something I needed to work on the phone. Well, this entitled little jerk marches over and insists that they must be allowed to sit there, even though half a phone is spread out between two seats on the bench. I relayed to them that the seat is in use and in any case, there is just no space available. They tried to say, "Well, there's obviously no one here," with a big stupid voice of sarcasm, and then proceeded to sit anyways, and then move their arms like they were about to try and sweep these tiny little phone screws off the edge. I moved my arm to to block them while still holding this mini screwdriver in my hand. We argued back and forth for a hot minute, and it's clear they're not giving up, but I'm not done and I'm not moving either. Well, this idiot then picks up their phone and goes, "I'm calling the police if you don't stop." But I just laugh and say, "Fine, go right ahead." Well, much to my surprise, that's exactly what they did. Right as I'm sitting there staring at me, they get this big grin on their face, and then she says over the phone that I said I was gonna stab her with a screwdriver. I then let out the biggest incredulous laugh and I say, "You know that's complete BS. You're trying to steal my friend's seat," and then try to push a bunch of her stuff onto the floor. So they get up and go outside and wait for the cops to show up, while I just finish repairing the phone. Considering that I was nearly done anyways, it really didn't take long, and just as we wrapped up, the cops showed up. We started to leave and I just kind of paused and I thought to myself, no, you know what, I'm not doing this. And I ended up walking over to the cops. I say to them, "I'm the one this little psycho's talking about. Here's the tools I was working with and this is the phone I was just repairing when they tried to shove the stuff on the ground. Do you need me to stick around?" One of the cops just gives me an eye rolling, looking like, "Oh no, we know this one," and goes, "No, you're all good," and so we just left. Now, what's crazy is that a few years later, I saw a post on the housing group in the area talking about exactly this kind of behavior, and much worse, like changing locks on roommates, throwing stuff out, etc. And they were warning people not to rent to this person. And it's funny because the picture they posted was someone who looked exactly like them. And while I'm not sure this is necessarily the same person, I honestly would not be surprised if it was, because this behavior seems incredibly familiar. Dude, this lady was crazy. Like, seriously, it is just a spot at Starbucks, dude. Like, why do you gotta act like a complete psychopath? Not only were they gonna like destroy your property and throw it all over the place, but they also made a fake phone call to the cops. Like, dude, you're a loser. Why would you do that? Just find somewhere else to sit. So yeah, I would not be surprised either if this is the same person that you dealt with, because it truly sounds like something they would absolutely do. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that I can't stand her daughter after I've literally witnessed her daughter take advantage of my friend in ways that are completely unacceptable, leading to my friend now giving me the silent treatment and making me wonder if I might have crossed the line? Here's what's going on. So I don't have any children of my own, but one of my girlfriends had a son of her own and adopted her niece at birth 17 years ago, even as a young mom. My friend did a great job raising her children, and at some points worked 3 jobs just to ensure her children got everything they could ask for. I have always applauded her for spoiling her kids and providing a luxury of life for them all on her own. Now, here's where things get a little bit sour. Her adopted daughter fell off the handles and stole her car and purse, which she didn't have a license to drive. She didn't call the police on her, and which I really get it. You don't want to get your child arrested. Her daughter then ended up leaving to live with her biological mom, who is my friend's sister. While in her care, she had no rules. She never went to school, and then she ended up pregnant. And we all gathered around to help out in any way that we could for this baby. My friend even threw a massive baby shower, and we all put in a lot of effort to make it fun. Well, my friend's daughter showed up, but spent most of the party outside passing joints around. And then when she was back at the party, she didn't appreciate all the people who had literally helped put on the baby shower, but instead made a big speech thanking her mom, her biological mom, while referring to my friend, the one who raised her, as her first name. It was terrible to see my friend treated awfully, but my friend still continued to provide everything to her daughter and bought 2 of everything so the baby would have everything at my friend's house and at the baby's home. The baby arrived and it was all sugar sweet. My friend was by her daughter's side to help with the baby and was back to being referred to as mom by her daughter. And it was nice like this for maybe a month. When the baby was a month old, my friend's daughter was already trying to pawn off the baby to go back to partying and getting in trouble. Now, how do I know this? Well, she moved into my mom's neighborhood and also was posting to her Snapchat, not realizing I wasn't blocked from seeing it. I mentioned it to my friend and she was just living in denial. It got to the point where the daughter was airing out her baby daddy drama by posting it on the internet and was asking for substances, parties, and even posted about her friends calling in fake reports to the police, to both the school and the mall, and just laughing about it. And at this point, I decided to remove her from my social media. Now, here's where I might be the jerk. My friend wanted to throw her daughter a big party to celebrate her 18th birthday, talking about themes and gifts and wanting to make it very elaborate. I thought about what I wanted to say, and I settled on advising that I wasn't going to come because I couldn't stomach watching her daughter disrespect her, and that I really just can't stand being around her after how she's been acting. I wished her a great party and hoped her daughter appreciated her throwing her a party in the first place. Well, my friend hasn't spoken to me now in 2 months, which makes me think that I might be the jerk here. So truly, did I mess up in some kind of way? Because right now I don't know what to do. No, honestly, I think you absolutely said what needed to be said, and any good friend who's worth their weight in gold would have been like, yeah, your daughter's not a good person. She's clearly taking advantage of your friend, and it's like, no matter how many times you try to spend money on her or like throw a party, I just don't think she's gonna care about you in the same way you care about her. So no, you're not the jerk for speaking up and saying the truth, because in my opinion, I think your friend absolutely needs to hear the truth. An entitled Karen tried to get my dog euthanized, all because her son was scared of him. She even took this a step farther by by filing a complaint with animal control, claiming that my dog had bit her son, trying to get me in trouble in a way that was completely inappropriate and completely false, leading me to believe that this lady has some serious problems. Here's what happened. I'm a 29-year-old female and I have a golden retriever named Benny. He is calm, trained, certified as a therapy dog, and honestly more polite than most people. I walk him daily at the same time through our local neighborhood park. Well, one day, this entitled mom comes up to me with her maybe 8-year-old son trailing behind her. She starts to say to me, "Excuse me, can you not walk your dog around here anymore? My son is afraid of big dogs." I then say to her, "Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but this is a public park and he's leashed and under control." She looks at me and says, "That is not the point. He gets anxious when he sees your dog. Do you want to traumatize a child?" I then told her that I'd be happy to cross the path if we saw them again, but I wasn't going to stop walking my dog. Well, fast forward a week and I get a knock on my door from animal control. And apparently this entitled Karen filed a complaint saying that my dog was aggressive and bit her son. Now, luckily, I had time-stamped security cam footage of us coming and going that day, and I even had a neighbor's phone video of Benny playing fetch nowhere near them. Well, the complaint was dropped, but I still can't get over the fact that she tried to have my dog put down, all because her kid just didn't like dogs, which really makes me believe that this woman has some serious issues. Dude, what a psychopath. Who in their right mind would do that? Like, seriously, if you don't like dogs, then guess what? Don't go to a park that has dogs that walk around. Like, what's going on right now? This is so stupid. This is so easily solved, it's not even funny. She could go literally anywhere else in the world, but instead she tries to be like, "You need to change your behavior for me," and then try to be like, "Oh yeah, your dog bit my child. I'm gonna have it put down." It's like, dude, what's happening right now? On that note, I really hope there's some kind of like legal step you can go through, because she literally made a false report against you and your dog. And this is like a certified therapy dog, so there's gotta be something on your side when it comes to like filing a complaint against her. Like, she literally endangered your dog's life for nothing. Like, actually no reason at all. You've never talked to this lady, you've never interacted with her or her stupid son. So for her to come out of nowhere and be like, "You need to leave," like, that's just so dumb and obnoxious. So good for you for shutting that down, and thank God you had some footage, because otherwise this could have easily gone in a much different direction. Am I the jerk for yelling at my sisters? All because they wanted to come on a fishing trip that was meant to be for just me and my dad as a graduation present. Because right now, even though it's been a few months later, I'm still very bitter about this and I just don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. I'm an 18-year-old female and I have a stepsister and a sister. I've never really gotten along with my stepfamily, but that's not super important for this story. I had just graduated high school, and as a reward for graduating and getting into my chosen program, my dad had booked a fishing charter for me and him and a family friend to go out and fish for a day, hopefully catching something and then have a nice fish dinner. I was super excited for this and spent ages researching everything, all the way down to what lures I'm going to use on the lake. Then one night we went out for dinner, namely me, my sisters, my dad, and stepmom, and my sisters announced how excited they were to go on the fishing trip. Now, this would not have been a problem if that was the original plan. I've gone fishing with them before and it was fun, but I rarely get to spend one-on-one time with my dad, so this was supposed to be special. On top of that, my biological sister had already had her graduation present the year before, which was a month-long European vacation. And no, I'm not joking. I wasn't allowed to go on that, of course, because it was my sister's present and I would get one the next year. After I tried to explain that no, this was my present and it was my time to have a solo trip, my dad just said they were coming and that was the end of the story. I then got upset and I yelled at them in the restaurant that it wasn't fair, that she had her fancy vacation that cost tens of thousands of dollars, and I just wanted one day, a single $200 fishing trip. Then I ran off to go sulk and whatnot, only to then return about 15 minutes later, just to be screamed at for being ungrateful and cruel, and then being told I was no longer going on the fishing trip. Well, the next day, my sisters and stepmom went on the trip, and while my dad did end up taking me on a smaller one, it still felt bad. And I will be completely honest, I was a bit grouchy for the duration of it, but I really did try to have fun, and I did catch something in the end. Well, today, a few months later, my dad suggested that my sister go on another short European vacation, while also helping our stepsister move, and staying a bit longer because of course she wouldn't just stay in Italy for 2 days. Then he mentioned having another fishing trip for the two of us, and I just jokingly said, well, shouldn't we wait to have my sisters get back? To which I was promptly called ungrateful and rude again. So I just want to know, am I the jerk here, or is there something else going on that I honestly cannot control? Because right now I just don't know what to do. You are not the jerk. Let me just say that first and foremost. You didn't do anything wrong, and the fact that your dad is showing favoritism is unbelievably disgusting. Because that's exactly what's happening, by the way. He would rather go to Europe with his other daughters than deal with you at all, apparently. And you're not even asking a lot. You literally are just trying to be like, hey, let's go on a fishing trip. Let's spend some one-on-one time together. How is this such a problem? Like, that is super uncalled for and just super toxic in my opinion. And the fact that he doesn't see a problem with it is just so bizarre to me. So yeah, this this is a really crappy situation, but it's definitely not your fault, because the fault, in my opinion, falls squarely on your dad's shoulders. My entitled brother gave out my phone number when we were younger to some random girl who called me repeatedly over and over again. But now, all the way into our adulthood, even though it's several years later, I finally got my revenge by giving out his phone number to a bunch of construction workers who have been using it in a way that honestly he will never forget. Here's what happened. Many years ago, before I was married, my little brother gave my phone number to some random girl while on a high school trip from St. Louis to Kansas City. This girl called me repeatedly one night while I was having dinner with my then girlfriend, claiming she was my little Italian princess. Well, fast forward several years, and this jerk is now on his third marriage, presumably because he's a massive narcissist. Now he's got a kid, and our mom shared his social media post to celebrate the birth of her 6th grandchild and 2nd grandson. Well, he lit her up, claimed that she didn't have his permission to share it, and then went into a 3-screen long diatribe about how she, my sister, and myself are the reason that he's been in therapy for almost 10 years, which is amazing because I cut all contact with the guy 5 years ago and barely even wanted to associate with him for 10 years before that. But needless to say, I digress because now I finally got my revenge. I recently handed over his number to a friend that's in construction with the guidance to give it to all of his construction friends and send them pictures of their actual crap from their job site porta potties. I've also started carrying a permanent marker in my truck so that I can leave his number behind in any sketchy gas station, bathroom, or a porta potty that I can find with a simple note of saying, hey, text me because I want to talk to you. And sure, while it is petty, it definitely still feels really good to get back at this guy because he was a nightmare growing up. Oh man, yeah, that's definitely a good way to get some very petty revenge. You don't even talk to this guy anymore and you're giving out his number to people and being like, oh yeah, send gross pictures to him, flood him, absolutely overwhelm his phone with this stuff. That's really funny in my opinion. I think that's hilarious. And honestly, that does seem like a good way to get revenge, especially with the way he treated you growing up. An entitled jerk refuses to allow me to do my job, telling that I can't tell him how to do his job, despite the fact that it was literally my job to inspect his plant that he worked at, resulting in his plant getting shut down, all because he refused to listen to me. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened decades ago for a food production company where I was a quality control manager. I regularly checked the quality of the food that we produced, as well as the food production lines for 4 plants in the area. One plant I inspected was operating with intolerance and received a generally good report, but I had to note one potential hazard. The parking lot was in terrible condition, and the dust that the employees' vehicles kicked up as they entered and left work could enter the plant and contaminate the food production line. I gave a copy of my report to the plant operations supervisor and suggested we get it taken care of before the USDA inspector noticed it. Well, his response was to say, you were here to inspect food production, not the parking lot. But I said that I'm here to ensure the quality of the food product that leaves this plant. But he responds by saying, that's BS. And then he said the words that every malicious complier thrives on. Don't tell me how to run my plant. Well, fast forward 6 weeks later, and the USDA inspector shuts down the plant, citing the quality of the parking lot and the heightened risk of dust entering the food production line. And it's like, oh man, who knew that was going to happen? But even then, there was a workaround that could have easily kept the plant open, only the plant operations had demanded that I don't tell them how to run their plant. But even so, I had to ask. The following month after the lot had been repaved and the inspector had finally approved the plant to be reopened, I said, well, why didn't you just close down the parking lot and have the employee park on the street? You could literally schedule the repave on a weekend and the plant could have stayed open in operation. Now, this guy didn't lose his job. In fact, he just retired from that company. So I guess it was a lesson learned, but you can bet he definitely did not talk to me ever again after that. Wow, imagine being so stubborn and idiotic that you wouldn't do exactly what it takes to I don't know, make sure your plant is going to stay open and have things going on the way it's supposed to go. And you can bet this guy was given 2 options. He can either be fired or he can retire early. And I'm positive that guy decided to retire early because he has no other prospects if he gets fired. So good for you for doing your job, and honestly, this guy got exactly what he deserved. Because if he had just listened, all of this could have been avoided very easily. Am I overreacting for wanting to quit my job after I was falsely accused of stealing something at work? Because right now I am completely heartbroken, and at this point I don't know what to do. Here's what's going on. Okay, to start things out, I work as a stalker. I've never done anything wrong at work, and I work very hard and go above and beyond what I need to do. But yesterday, I was accused by a boss saying that I stole and drank one of their beers. But this is not true, and I'm very upset about it. I told them that they're wrong and I could see the footage, and they said there's no camera there, but they said that they could see me do it. Now, I bring my own water bottle to work, and that's all I've ever drank. I told them that they're wrong and how upset I feel about the accusation, because I work really hard for them. At the end of the night, they apologized and said they feel stupid for accusing me and know that I'm a good worker and probably the best worker they've ever had, and they don't want to lose me. but I still feel hurt and let down. Like, why am I working my butt off so hard and going above and beyond when this could happen so easily? I mean, what should I do here? It's really stressing on me and I feel undervalued and underappreciated, and I really just want to quit at this point, but I'm honestly not sure if that's the right move. What should I do? Okay, dude, the second anybody falsely accuses me of anything is the second I'm gonna put my notice in or just straight up quit and go somewhere else. Seriously, this is them probably testing the waters to see if they could get you in trouble, just to see how you would react to that kind of thing. Because you said it yourself, dude. You go there, you work hard, you do your job, you're not bothering anybody, and you're literally just trying to do a good job. And trust me, I respect that. I think that's something that's really good about a worker, and the fact that you're showing those qualities is a good thing. But from the sounds of it, these people are trying to take advantage of you or just try to get you fired entirely. So if this was me, I would 100% be going to like human resources and being like, look, these people are falsely accusing me of stealing. I'm not okay with this and I don't appreciate that. Because this absolutely could be considered them trying to like defame your character and get you in trouble, especially for something that they have no evidence of, aside from them saying, oh, we saw you do it. Like, that's the first thing I would do, because trust me, you do not have to put up with this. These people do not have the right to treat you like garbage and make you seem like some kind of criminal because you've done nothing wrong. And then depending on how that conversation goes, like, I would absolutely start looking for another job. This does not seem like a place where there's going to be longevity of any kind. It seems like it's full of people who are just a bunch of bullies who are going to mistreat you pretty much no matter what. And that's really not fair for you, and you absolutely do not deserve that. My psycho coworker shows up to my house just to verify whether or not I was actually homesick from the hospital. But after I reported them and my manager for trying to write me up, this psycho coworker ends up getting fired. Here's how it all went down. Okay, to start things out, my husband was very sick. We had to take him to the ER after he passed out from dehydration from an intestinal bug that he'd been dealing with for a few days. On the way, he calls his job to let them know, and when we get to the ER, we park in the garage, and we get a little ticket that the ER validates for you. He's brought back and immediately given fluids and meds, taken back for a CT scan, etc. Well, we find out later that a coworker who was pissy that she was going to be shorthanded took it upon herself to somehow find our address and later drive over to our apartment to check and see if my husband really is sick. She then sees our upstairs neighbor, who vaguely resembles my husband. They're both 6'3", they have light brown hair, and they have similar builds. Although this guy's like 15 years younger though and has an infant with him, whereas our kids are in their late 20s, early 30s. She then goes back to work and tells her boss that we lied about being sick, as she says that she saw him walking around outside perfectly fine. The next morning, the boss calls my husband and lets him know he's going to be written up for calling out under false pretense and for causing staffing issues. And after pressing him for information, he tells us about what the coworker did. My husband then tells the boss that firstly, we have proof that we were in the ER at the time the coworker said she saw him, and secondly, that he's filling an HR complaint out on both the coworker and the manager, as there isn't any rule about why anyone can call out, and why on earth is the coworker coming to our house to spy on us? For reference, where we live, management isn't allowed to inquire about your health, nor are they allowed to let you tell them about your health issues. Well, my manager then starts getting defensive and states if we can give him proof, then he'll excuse it. But my husband just says, oh, you'll get your proof, and then hangs up. He then immediately calls human resources and lets them know exactly what happened. We then provide them the time-stamped parking ticket and part of the discharge paperwork from the ER showing what time we arrived and left. Well, the next week an email is sent out notifying all employees and management about the law concerning sick time, and also a separate notification that employees are not to be following, spying on, or otherwise contacting other employees outside of the office regarding work, time off, or literally anything. My husband was then called into a meeting with the manager, as well as the department head and the female employee. The manager and the employee were both absolutely roasted by the department head. The only thing the employee had to say was that the person she saw looked like my husband, and she was just very angry about the situation. And the manager's excuse was that the female employee had been there a long time, so he trusted her when she told him that. When asked about how she got our address, we come to find out that our manager lets her in his computer regularly, and she has been privy to other employees' private information for some time. The department head said my husband was free to go with his profound apologies, and eventually we later found out the employee was fired and the manager was demoted and moved to a different department. And honestly, for the both of them, this is absolutely deserved. Oh my gosh, this pisses me off so bad, dude. There's no way I would be okay with this. If I had one of my coworkers spying on me and showing up to my house, let alone having my address at all, dude, I would lose my mind. They're literally trying to be like, oh, you're faking it. You're not actually sick. Meanwhile, you probably still have like the hospital band on your wrist, dude. Like, what's going on right now? How can anyone think this is some kind of like rational way of thinking? Because I'm pretty sure all of us have worked with like that kind of coworker where they're like, oh my God, someone's calling out again. I can't can't stand that. Where they've worked at a job way too long and somehow it's everybody else's fault when things don't go as planned. Like, dude, I cannot stand people who act like this. But thankfully, karma came in clutch and you didn't get written up because that would have been, like, infuriating. There's no way I would have been okay with that. And I just love that the employee got fired and the manager got demoted because what they did was completely unacceptable. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Angry customers are always coming back to our restaurant, despite the fact that they always, every single time, have a negative experience. And I'm seriously left wondering why that is because it simply just doesn't make any sense. Here's what's happening. So I had a coworker call out the same day at the food hall I work at recently, and I came in to cover him and arrived about 45 minutes after opening time. A customer was waiting during that period and was annoyed, saying that he was waiting for a long time. I told him my coworker called out and I was there to cover him, and the guy just didn't seem to care, other than the fact that he had to wait. He started barking out his order before I even clocked in, and even turned the TVs on. I then told him to give me one moment to get things up and running first, and even then he still didn't look happy to hear that. He then starts asking what time we open, and I tell him 11 o'clock in the morning unless someone calls out, then it's whenever I arrive. And when I said that, he proceeds to scowl. I tell him I'm ready, and he then belts out an order without giving me any time to put in each item. I then ask him to please give me a second to put the items in. Well, of course he doesn't tip, no surprise there, but I bring the food out anyways, and he's already scanning it to ask for more stuff. He'll say stuff like, "Is there any limes in here?" And I'll say to him, "They are right there, sir." And I point to the visible limes in the dish. "Well, can you go get some more?" I say to him, "Sure, no problem." I then go back and I grab some more. Well, when I show up, he says, "Let me get some more, buddy." And I just say to him, "Yeah, you got it, buddy." I mean, this guy is a real class act. The funny thing is that this guy has returned multiple times, and each time I can see that annoyed expression on his face as he relives the inconvenience of that first day. Every time he orders, he just seems pissed off and makes the entire ordering process a game, constantly saying, "What? What do you mean? What's going on?" Like, dude, if you're so mad about it, why do you keep coming back? There is 15 other stalls to order from, but this guy's obsessed. We must be that good, I guess. So why do irate customers that have such poor experiences seem to love coming back to said establishment? Do they enjoy the pain? Do they think they have some kind of power over you? I'm waiting for the moment that they step out of line so I can absolutely 86 them, because at this point, I'm honestly getting pretty frustrated. Dude, I have wondered the exact same thing. Seriously, some people are always so pissed off that it just doesn't make any sense. You would think if they really didn't like a place and they didn't like the customer service or anything involved, they would be like, okay, I'm gonna go somewhere else because this is not serving me well. But I think you've touched on something really important. It kind of seems like they get off on like this power and like this angst over you, as if this is the one place they can go to where they can kind of like boss somebody around and be like, oh yeah, this is what I want. And they can somehow get away with it because for once, they're the one in charge. Like, I'm convinced people are actually like that because that is just so prevalent, it's not even funny. So yeah, I'm just as baffled as you are. If I didn't like a place, there's no way I would go back. So the fact that you deal with this person constantly, in my opinion, is just super weird. An entitled Karen demands that I hand over a jacket that I won at a raffle, all because it was a boy's jacket and that me, being a girl, should not be allowed to wear it, resulting in one of the most confusing situations I've ever been in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so this happened many years ago, but it honestly still annoys me to this day. When I was in high school, I dated a guy whose parents were in a motorcycle gang. Now, not an actual gang, but it was more of like a group of people that rode together, drank together, and did philanthropic events in the community, and we would frequent their clubhouse for dinners and events. One night, we attended a fundraising event for a fellow member whose wife had cancer. They were doing a ticket raffle, so I bought one for $10. I've never won anything in my life, so I figured I was just making a small donation. After the dinner and the speeches were done, they started the raffle, and one prize was a very nice children's Harley-Davidson leather jacket. It was worth at least $200 plus and was part of a limited release. I mean, this was a super cool jacket. Well, they called my number and I won it. I was obviously excited and collected my prize once the raffle was done. And spoiler, I still own the jacket and I wear it to this day. The jacket was a child size large, and I'm a very petite person, and I was even smaller at the age of 15, but the child's large fit perfectly. I put it on and I wore it for the remainder of the night, and I got lots of compliments, and the teenage version of me was absolutely hyped. Later, while I'm alone, a woman suddenly approaches me, and it's here that she point blank asks me if she can buy the jacket for her son. In fact, she offers me $50 for it. I decline, as it is a very expensive jacket and I want it, and I definitely want it. Well, she then gets a confused look on her face and says, "But it's for boys. It's a boy's jacket. It's not for teenage girls." Mind you, I'm currently wearing the jacket, and I again tell her that I'm not selling it. I will be keeping it, and that I don't care that it's technically a boy's jacket. She again asks to buy the jacket, that her son will wear it, because she refuses to let go and just simply says, "It's for boys." I'm now starting to get uncomfortable as she has me cornered by a wall and won't drop the conversation. My boyfriend's mom notices that I'm distressed and walks over, asking what's going on. But this woman just repeats herself like a broken record. She wants to buy the expensive jacket for $50 because it's for boys, and a teenage girl shouldn't be wearing it. My boyfriend's mom then gets mad at her and tells her that the jacket looks great on me and that I will be keeping it and that she needs to walk away. The entitled mom then looks me dead in the eyes and says, "You are a very rude young lady, and you're wrong for wearing a boy's jacket." Now at this point, I was upset and I wanted to leave. My boyfriend's mom tells us to go sit in the car and that she will be out shortly. We're alone for maybe like 20 minutes before she comes back, where she states that it's been handled and that I won't need to worry about that woman bothering me ever again. The rude lady was the wife of a new member, and he had not been initiated into the gang yet. My boyfriend's mom complained to the president, and he told the prospective member that he and his wife were no longer welcome to join. They were protective of me, and bothering me over a jacket was completely unacceptable. And you know what? I never saw that woman ever again. I still own the jacket and I wear it to this day. I don't ride anymore, but it's warm and it's waterproof. And yes, it's technically a boy's item of clothing, but seriously, who cares? I will never understand why this woman was so bothered by it. Now, unfortunately, my boyfriend and his mom turned out to be awful pieces of garbage, and they traumatized me terribly, and I'm in therapy to this day for the torment they put me through. But I will say, I am forever grateful that she and the president stepped in and banned that crazy lady from their club. They didn't tolerate that behavior for a second. It's too bad they had no problem with actual members mistreating their kids, but hey, they do have some standards, and I got to keep the jacket in the end, even if those standards are super corrupt. Oh man, this story really zigged when I thought it was gonna zag. Like, holy crap, that is not what I expected. I'm glad you have the jacket, but I'm also like really glad you got away from your boyfriend and his mom. Like, the original poster didn't go into too much more detail about it, but from the sounds of it, it seems like it was not a good situation, and they're kind of glad they got away from it. So yeah, good for you that you got to keep the jacket, but especially that you got away from those people, because they do not sound like winners in the slightest. An entitled Karen tries to kick me out of my seat at a cafe, stating that this is her favorite spot and she deserves to sit there since she shops here all the time. And I'm honestly just still blown away by this level of entitlement, because this really was a crazy situation. Here's what happened. Okay, so I was at my favorite little cafe. I had my laptop out, my headphones in, and I was enjoying a quiet corner seat by the window. I'd been there for maybe 30 minutes, sipping my drink and working, when this woman walks up and just stands there next to me staring at me. I take off one earbud and I say hi, and she goes, "You've been here for a while. I always sit here." And I'm just like, what is going on right now? I said to her, "Okay, but I'm using it right now." She then rolls her eyes and says to me, "I'm friends with the owner, and this is my spot that she gives me because I come here every single day." Well, I said to her, if it's your spot, then maybe you should have gotten here earlier. And when I said that, this definitely did not go over well. She then started muttering about how people with laptops ruin cafes, and then she stormed over to get a staff member. The barista comes over, clearly exhausted with this idiot, and says, "Ma'am, it's first come, first serve, you know that." When the barista said that, the Karen looked so offended, like she had just been betrayed by her own team. She glared at me, mumbled something about manners, and stormed off to the other side of the cafe like a child. So seriously, am I crazy, or are some people just so entitled these days? Like, no one owns a cafe seat, and just because you loiter at this cafe every single day doesn't mean that you magically get assigned seating. Holy crap, that is some serious entitlement. It's always funny meeting someone like this that really thinks they're some kind of like VIP just because they shop somewhere all the time. Like, sure, you're probably there a lot, you love their products, you support the business, whatever. But that doesn't magically mean that you get some kind of like assigned seat. That's so stupid. Not to mention going up to another random customer and being like, "You need to get out of my way." Like, dude, that's super cringy behavior, and there is no reason to act like that. So I love the way you handled this. I think you did it perfectly, because you are 100% in the right. A prior tenant to a property I'm renting keeps showing up at my house, banging on my door, demanding their mail. And simply because I'm afraid of this person and I don't know what their intentions are, I've called the police to try and mitigate this situation, leaving me completely gobsmacked of what I should do next. Here's what's going on. So I just moved into a new rental home about a month ago. Well, ever since I did, I've been getting a significant amount of junk mail and bills addressed to the prior tenant. I did the right thing by writing "return to sender, not at this address" on each envelope, and I put them in the mailbox with a flag up, but the mail just simply keeps coming in. Well, about 2 weeks ago, a woman drove aggressively into my driveway honking her horn. I work from home and my office window faces the road, and I keep the blinds open, so I clearly saw a lady in her car waving at me with a huge cast on her wrist. She wouldn't get out, so for safety, I started recording and I hid from view. And it's like, sorry, but I just don't trust anybody. But after some time, she eventually left. But the next day, the same thing happens. She pulled in, honked her horn, waved, I hit again, and then she screamed, "I want my mail." And it's like, sorry, I don't know you. I'm a female alone in a new area. This could easily just be a trap of some kind. When she left, I noticed a package I was expecting was missing. I called the non-emergency dispatch and I told them what happened. I described her and the car and that my package was gone. They then said that they would send for an officer. About 20 minutes later, a cop and the lady showed up at my house. This is a small town after all, so they found her pretty quickly. The officer acted as a neutral party while she explained that she uses informed delivery, saw my name, found me on Facebook, where she then messaged me some nonsense request to get her mail, but fortunately it was marked as spam, so I never saw it. So I told her any mail that was not mine is marked and returned. I even taped a note on my door saying the same thing. She then claimed that she didn't take a package and that it still hasn't shown up yet. But I told her that she scared me. But she said that she only honked her horn because she was scared of my dog. You know, my 10-pound chihuahua. Things eventually calmed down and they left. Now, as a side note, this is a huge privacy violation. She still has informed delivery here and found me on Facebook, which makes me very uncomfortable. I contacted the post office and requested they stop her informed delivery access for this address. I thought it was over after the police visit, but yesterday she came back in a different vehicle. She pulled in aggressively, she honked her horn, she rang the doorbell like 3 times, and even banged on the door. But I did not answer and I just hit again. And thankfully she left quickly after that. So seriously, am I the jerk for ignoring her, not giving her the mail, not responding to her on Facebook, and for calling the police? I'm not collecting her junk mail like a free P.O. box. I also found out that she was evicted, had lots of people at the house, and treated the place horribly. I saw the condition when I toured it and it was absolutely filthy. What should I do? Okay, first off, if this was me, I would not only be changing the locks if you haven't already, but I would also be putting up cameras literally everywhere. We're talking like a doorbell camera, as well as a camera facing the driveway, as well as every other entrance you might have on the property. It also wouldn't hurt to be like, okay, from now on, I'm gonna get all my stuff via P.O. box, because I guarantee you this idiot absolutely stole your package. And honestly, this situation is so weird, because why not just forward all your mail to your new address, lady? Why hassle the new tenant of a property you got evicted from, instead of just going to the post office and doing the work necessary? This would take what, maybe an hour to take care of? Like, why are you being so insane? And honestly, when it comes to you hiding, I think I would have done the exact same thing. I am not about to open that door for anybody I don't know, especially in a new area. Like, this lady's acting insane. She's banging on your door, ringing the doorbell, trying to like intimidate you into getting the mail for her, and then she finds you on Facebook and says, "Get my mail for me, do it." It's like, dude, what are you talking about? I am not doing that. Leave me alone. Stay out of my life. So no, you're definitely not the jerk. Like, you did not do anything wrong. And hopefully she never comes back, because this is some insane behavior. My entitled ex-husband thought that I owed him my entire income for the next 5 years simply because we were married while I was going through college. And I've honestly never been more happy to get away from an awful marriage, because this guy was a complete psychopath. Here's what happened. Okay, so this was already years ago when we first began our divorce proceedings. It was this awful, controlling, very bad marriage. But I was in university when we met, taking courses to get into my now career. I worked through most of my degree, so I was able to pay for myself and my tuition. The last year of my degree, it became overwhelming to work at the same time, so my ex told me I should quit my job and that he would support us. And I thought to myself, okay, this is great. I quit, I used my savings to help with my side of the bills, I did all the household chores, and I made sure that I held up my end of things. I then graduate and I get multiple job offers and I start working right away. Well, our marriage fell apart about 7 months after I started. He had multiple affairs, plus the awful mistreatment, and after everything else, I just left and went no contact. Our first time seeing each other was about 15 months later at a mediation meeting with our respective lawyers, and it only took about 15 minutes to begin shouting and cursing at me, and then him demanding all of my income. He said to me, "She would be nowhere without me. I gave her her career. I only helped with the expectation that I would be reaping the benefits of her salary for the foreseeable future." Well, basically both lawyers were dumbfounded, and his scrambled to get him to stop talking. I still chuckle to myself when I think about that meeting. As terrifying as it was at the time, it is absolutely hilarious to think about now. Yeah, your ex-husband is a psychopath. That is an insane precedent to set. He literally tried to be like, "Ooh, I made you. I deserve all your money." And it's like, dude, this is not how this works at all. You cannot possibly be serious right now. So from the sounds of it, especially with that statement alone, you definitely ended up with a better deal by getting away from this guy, because what he's demanding out of you is absolutely not normal. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story, because we would love to hear what you have to say. Am I the jerk for refusing to give up my seat for a woman on a crowded train simply because I was tired and I needed to sit down? Because now my roommate is saying I'm in the wrong for not getting up, and at this point, I'm not sure if I made a mistake. Here's how it went down. I'm a 28-year-old male, and I take the train from work every day. Now, I have a physically demanding job. I'm on my feet for 8 to 10 hours a day, lifting and moving heavy stuff with no real breaks. So by the end of the day, I am absolutely drained. But yesterday, I got very lucky and I got a seat, which rarely happens. About 2 stops in, a woman, maybe in her late 20s to early 30s, gets on. She looked around, saw there were no seats, and then stood right in front of me. And I could tell she was expecting me to stand up and offer mine, but I simply didn't. She kept glaring at me kind of dramatically, like sighing and looking around, clearly hoping that I'd offer. Eventually, she directly asked me, "Would you mind letting me sit down?" I said to her, "I'm sorry, I've had a long day. I need to rest my legs." When I said that, she looked shocked and just said, "Wow." Then she stood there for the rest of the ride, giving me dirty looks. A guy across from me kind of smirked, and later someone mumbled, "Chivalry is dead," as they got off. I told my roommate about it, and she said I was a jerk and that it's basic manners to offer women seats, especially if they're standing and I'm younger and able-bodied. But I don't see why my gender should mean I have to give up my comfort. If the roles were reversed, no one would expect a woman to stand for a tired man. So am I the jerk for not giving up my seat just because I'm a guy and she was a woman? Because right now I'm honestly not sure. Okay, honestly, I do not think you're the jerk at all. And instead, I think the lady in the story is super entitled. The fact that she was trying to be like, can I sit down? You need to stand. And then gave you this weird attitude and like aggressive body language all because you said, "No, I'm really tired." Like that is super messed up and not okay. If this was someone who had a disability or who was pregnant or something like that, like only then would I be like, "Oh, of course, please sit down." Absolutely. But it's really disingenuous for her to be like, you need to like let me sit there because I'm a woman. Like that's weird to me and that absolutely makes no sense. She is just as able-bodied as the guy sitting down, but I'm willing to bet based on the description that she didn't have a 10-hour workday of lifting and moving stuff all day. It's not selfish to sit there and be like, "I'm tired, I need to rest my legs." You have every right to sit there just like anybody else. And it's so funny to me that someone was like, "Wow, chivalry is dead." But then again, they're the same people not standing up and giving her their seat. Like if you really feel that way, then put your money where your mouth is. Give up your seat and let her sit down. Like if that's really how you feel, then prove me wrong. It's always people in the peanut gallery who are like, "Wow, that person is so bad." Meanwhile, they'll never step up and do it themselves and instead just sit there and judge you. I can't stand people who act like that. It is so infuriating. At least back up what you're trying to claim. Don't just virtue signal. Like, come on. So no, I definitely don't think you're the jerk, and I think this entire situation is very silly. My toxic job tries to set me up and get me fired for something so ridiculous that it honestly blew my mind. So I decided to get some revenge by quite literally taking everybody down with me, as I figured if I was getting fired, then I was going to make sure everyone else got fired as well, resulting in me flipping the table in this company, resulting in 20 people getting fired instead of me. Here's how I did it. I want to start off by saying that this situation was a complete accident. I definitely did not plan it, but in the end, it still kind of works out for me. A few years ago, I was working at a popular petrol station on a popular freeway. Unfortunately, one afternoon, I'd had a freak accident reaching for my drink bottle, and I ended up slipping a disc between my L5 and S1. As a side note, it was beyond anything I'd ever experienced. Well, after many months of physical therapy, I was approved to return for minimal hours. I understand that it was a complete freak accident, and not at one point did I blame it on the company, but it happened at work, which probably saved me years of spinal surgeries. Anyways, one day back at work during a 4-hour shift, I'd had a sore throat that day. Now, normally, we are allowed to grab a coffee once a shift, so I asked the second in command, who is someone I'll call Clifford for the sake of the story, if it was possible to have a cup of slushy instead to soothe my throat. Clifford responded by saying, "Yeah, that's cool, just put it in a coffee cup," which is exactly what I did, following his guidance. And you know what? This did the trick. It really did help my throat. The next morning at approximately 7 o'clock in the morning, I awoke to an official email from this company stating that I'm being suspended without pay due to a serious breach of conduct. Now, obviously, I'm baffled and pretty upset. I'm aware that I'm back on reduced hours, being watched, etc. So I reply and we set up a meeting in person 2 days later. Now, it was me, my support person, the second in command, the store manager, and 2 people from human resources, which I'm sure they had to make a massive drive for. We then sit down in an adjacent building, and I'm honestly still baffled as to what's going on. The store manager said, "Hi, so we've called you here today for an offense that we can terminate you for immediately." And to be honest, at this point, I was absolutely crapping myself. What on earth could I have possibly done? So I asked them to please elaborate on what's happening. Well, they then begin with a very patronizing question, which was a massive first red flag. They said to me, "Do you understand the definition of stealing?" Well, being confused, I looked at them and I said, "Well, I would like to think so." At this point, the store manager begins. He said to me, "Monday you drank a slushie out of a coffee cup, and that is a breach and considered stealing." At this point, point, I was relieved because the second in command was in the meeting, and I reacted by saying, oh, well, this is all a misunderstanding. I asked Clifford before I touched anything. I thought the same thing, so I double-checked and I got permission. Well, this is where things really went south because this guy literally looks at me across the table and says, that never happened. And when I heard that, I knew that I was in some serious trouble because this guy was actually trying to throw me under the bus. The silence was palpable, and my jaw was in my lap. My eyes are darting back and forth, thinking there's no way I'm being set up like this. Hundreds of scenarios ran through my head just then. Confusion, shock, anger, and then just acceptance. My back was messed up. I was trying my best to recover, and I'm now being accused of ripping a petrol station off by about 3 cents worth of slushy so the managers could get a bonus from getting rid of me. But this was my favorite part. Everything just kind of melted away. The anger, the injustice of everything, like all of it was just gone. I let out a big sigh and I just started smiling. I looked directly at the store manager who, unfortunately for him, underestimated my observation skills. Because a week prior, mind you, there were plenty of other offenses. I saw him purposefully knock a pack of Oreos off the shelf, followed by him saying, oh, I guess I have to write that off for my morning meeting. And at the time, I didn't even think about it because who cares? But you know what? Now I definitely do. So I said, okay, but if I'm confused, let me clarify something. I then stared down the store manager and I laid out what happened. And I asked him and human resources if that would be considered stealing, all without breaking eye contact. Well, when I said that, I witnessed his soul leave his body. I sensed human resources doing a slow pause and turn, but I quickly moved on and I decided I'm taking everybody down. Next, I went to the second in command, namely Clifford, who I also had nothing against, but hey, here we are. He was freshly married, he had a 2-year-old and a baby on the way, and he was also screwing around with another cashier. Let's call her Tracy. They were literally doing that in the bathroom during work, if you know what I mean. And again, I just mind my own business, like I don't really care, even though I really do think that he's a piece of garbage for doing that. I looked at him, then the manager, and then human resources, and I asked if Clifford was a reliable source of information, seeing as he's doing the dirty in the bathroom, if you know what I mean, and just straight up cheating on his wife. Now, by this point, human resources needed a defibrillator. Then I threw in that half the staff are smoking the herb on their break, and I'm not trying to send hate their way, but it was more to throw shade that my manager is useless. And while I was at it, I truly only liked 2 people that worked there from a very busy 24-hour store. I went on for the next 30 minutes about every single branch I had seen in the last week, and I let them know I could definitely help them out with more information. And at that point, the meeting was ended abruptly, as you can probably imagine. 3 days later, and I was still offended, but I had gathered myself and I thought, you know what, screw them. I'm young, I'll move on. Human resources then called me and asked me to come in, and I had absolutely prepared myself to be fired, and I was already mentally checked out, recognizing that there's no way I could go back and play nice with people that threw me under the bus. But when I sit down, human resources is groveling. There's probably some sort of court case I could have followed, but again, I was young and ready to burn the bridge, and it was then that they offered me Clifford's job. Now, if you're wondering what happened to Clifford, they told me that he and that girl he was spending quality time with have quit, and this is because Clifford's wife was trying to pull her through the safety barrier every time she went on shift. Also, they fired 18 people for breaches after going through a lot of footage. This included staff eating expired food and all this other stuff. I then asked them to give me some time to think about my situation. I walked back over to the main store and there's my manager in tears, packing his stuff up in the office into a cardboard box like some kind of movie scene. And at this point, I simply couldn't help myself. I had a spring in my step and I asked him, oh, why are you crying? What's wrong? And he told me through his tears he's going on leave and all this other garbage. Well, to make a long story short, I ended up quitting 3 days later, and it was honestly the best decision I've ever made in my life. Holy crap, this is some fantastic revenge, like seriously. It's also pretty obvious that Clifford was absolutely trying to throw you under the bus and just get rid of you for some stupid reason. Like this guy literally had it out for you and he's like, oh, that never happened, as if this is some kind of like perfect crime to get you eliminated. Meanwhile, he's playing Twister in the bathroom with a cashier. Like, dude, are you kidding me right now? Stealing a slushie is not nearly as bad as doing that on the clock. So honestly, I think you did the right thing by being like, okay, everybody's getting canceled. If I'm going down, I'm taking this entire ship with me. Because screw that, these people are literally trying to like take you down for nothing. We're talking a cup full of slushie for a sore throat. That is hardly stealing on the clock. Like what these people are doing is actually stealing. This is them trying to split hairs and be like, I hope he stays quiet so we can fire him. Meanwhile, you get your main manager's job and everybody else gets fired. It's like, dude, this is like the ultimate karma. So good for you for getting out of that job and moving on, but also taking down all these people. Because if they're gonna screw around, then they absolutely deserve to find out. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. place. My idiot toxic boss wrote me up for being 6 minutes late while also humiliating me in front of the entire office for not being on time. But I decided to get some revenge by literally working a loophole that allowed me to show up whenever I wanted, since the punishment for showing up late was the same across the board, regardless of how late you might actually be. Here's what happened. Okay, I've always been the kind of person to arrive at work early. I hate the stress of running late, so I always allow more than enough travel time on my commute to avoid lateness. I always stop for a coffee first thing on my morning commute to work. It was a half-hour drive to work on the highway, so I'd like to sip my coffee and listen to tunes to relax before work. Even though it's only a half-hour commute, I would leave for work an hour before my start time, just in case there were any unexpected delays. One particular day, there's a massive jam on the highway. Now, normally, I get to work 30 minutes early because of the extra travel time, but this traffic jam was bad enough that it still made me 6 minutes late for work. Well, my supervisor then starts giving me crap for coming in late but still having a coffee in my hand, publicly calling me out in front of the other employees. Hey everyone, look at this guy. His morning coffee is more important than him respecting his coworkers. But no amount of me saying, hey, I bought the coffee before I knew there was a traffic jam would get him to stop bothering me. He then wrote me up for being late. Now, my company had a policy that less than 5 minutes late is okay, but more than 5 minutes late means a potential write-up. It doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes or 30 seconds or 2 hours late. The punishment was all the same. However, supervisors were given leeway on this and were encouraged not to penalize people unless they were consistently late. I was almost never late. I almost always was early, but my supervisor decided to punish me anyways. So fast forward a couple of weeks and another delay happens, and it looks like I'm going to arrive at work about 15 minutes late. So knowing that I'm going to get written up no matter what, I pulled off the highway, I found a nice little restaurant, and I had a leisurely 2-hour breakfast. I then showed up about 2.5 hours late, got the same write-up I would have gotten if I had been 15 minutes late, but at least I got to relax and eat some bacon. I still showed up at work early 99% of the time, but every now and then there might be a delay that would mean I'd be about 6 minutes late, or even 10 or 15 minutes late. Rather than take the penalties of a lousy couple of minutes, each time I'd extend the late time a couple of hours and just have a nice relaxing breakfast. And honestly, I don't regret it for a second. Man, this is hilarious to me for so many reasons. But most of all, it's the fact that the supervisor really decided to act like that. They seriously tried to be like, oh hey, look at this person who's always on time, being late for the first time. Wow, isn't this embarrassing? It's like, dude, if you want someone to no longer care, just keep doing that. Because you just took one of your workers and said, okay, let me take away all your motivation. And that's why they're taking 2-hour breaks to go to breakfast. Like, why show up on time and get made fun of when you can just show up a few hours late and get the same write-up? I honestly don't blame the original poster, and if I was in their shoes, I would have done the exact same thing. And Entitled Karen keeps putting her hands on my wheelchair against my consent, causing a lot of pain in my back every time she does it. Things got so bad that I eventually turned around and I gave her a piece of my mind, leaving her completely speechless as she fumbled for what to say. Here's how I did it. Okay, to start things out, I was in the customs line in my wheelchair. Suddenly, my chair shifts, sending a bolt of pain through my back. I then realized the woman behind me was grabbing my wheelchair and has shifted her full weight onto my chair handle. As she was a bigger person, it twisted the entire frame for a second. I assumed she had grabbed my chair by accident, perhaps to prevent a fall, so I just didn't say anything. But I did roll forward as soon as I could. Well, a few minutes later, it happened again, with the same gigantic bolt of pain. So I turned around to look at the woman, and she was looking away and acting like nothing had happened. I said to her, excuse me, please stop grabbing my wheelchair, it hurts my back. She then scoffed at me and said, it's a long line and my feet hurt. But I told her, this is my wheelchair. It's an extension of my body. Don't touch it again. Now, everything was fine for maybe about 10 minutes, but then she did it a third time. But this time, I rolled around and I let her have it. I said to her, every time you do that, it causes me pain. Would it be okay for me to grab you to hold myself up? Don't touch me again. At this point, she was trying to justify her actions, but I was not having it. She actually seemed to think that there was nothing wrong with what she did. My husband was about 10 feet ahead of me because I hit the bathroom before the lineup, and when he heard, he came running back and got between us. A staff member then came over, and they ended up getting her a chair to use to hold herself up. Not to sit in, mind you, but just to hold herself up. I mean, if her feet actually hurt that bad, she would have sat down in the chair. And honestly, I was so furious. Like, what was her problem? I'm sorry your feet hurt, but I'm in a wheelchair, lady. I'm not in it because my feet are sore. My legs don't work, you raving idiot. Every time she moved her chair forward, she would make these theatrical groans and moans, something she didn't do before. My husband then got behind me to put some distance between us, which was good because I really wanted to smack her, which is something that would have absolutely gotten me arrested. Dude, that's so weird. Like, why would you touch anybody's wheelchair? Especially in like a public situation. It's like, dude, you do not know them, don't touch their property. And if your feet are hurting and you're like, oh, I can't really stand that much, much. Then lean against the wall, dude, or like call up a staff member like you should have done. Go take care of yourself instead of making this everybody else's problem. So yeah, you did the right thing by telling this lady off because it sounds like she was not getting the picture. And the fact that she was trying to justify any of this is just so insane to me. My mom is obsessed with me doing gymnastics, but I plan on quitting so that I could become a doctor. And now my mom is literally having a mental breakdown over this, and I seriously am not sure what to do now. Here's what's going on. Okay, I started gymnastics when I was 2 years old. It's my mother's obsession as she is a former member of the Soviet Union where it is very popular. I would say that was probably the thing that she was the most excited about since I was born. She started stretching me when I was very young. I was running, doing resistance training, literally anything that might make me better at it than anyone else. And you know what? I'm quite good at it. I don't want to sound full of myself, but I have won a lot of things. But I can't say that I enjoy it very much. It isn't something that I'd say I'd willingly do for fun, but it is sort of the only thing my mother does. She was one of those parents that would stay through the entire practice. It was really embarrassing and only stopped when I was maybe like 16 years old. She spent all her time stitching my leotards, taking me to practices, competitions, buying hair things. Her whole life is in gymnastics, and I just don't really think she has any other hobbies. I turned 18 recently and I also finished school, which I'm really happy about. I mean, it's really boring. I will do my military service and then I want to go to university. I want to be a doctor. I have had a lot of bone and muscle issues, and I would like to be able to help people with that. Plus, being able to literally replace someone's joint in a way is really cool, and I want to do things like that. I'm really excited about all of it, and it's what I've always wanted to do. But my mother is kind of having a breakdown. I'm not a mental health expert, but she is always crying and yelling at me and just being weird. She says that she doesn't want me to leave, that I'm wasting all that she's done for me and it's going to be worthless, that I'm not talented enough at anything else, I don't appreciate her, that I hate her, and that I'm going to get fat and all these other things. And she's always crying. It's really embarrassing and weird. And she was never like this before. So now I don't really know what to do. Obviously, I don't want to continue with gymnastics, but I feel kind of guilty about making her so distressed. And it's kind of hard to say no to her. I know what I want, but when she's so unhappy with it, it's kind of hard. What should I do? Okay, first and foremost, the way she's acting is super manipulative, and in my opinion, just doesn't sound healthy at all. Like seriously, she's sitting there trying to be like, you're gonna be worthless. You have no other talent besides this. And like, I don't think that's true at all, and in fact, she's only talking about herself. Like, she really is projecting her issues onto you as if this is somehow your responsibility. But like, dude, you're 18, you're trying to move on with your life. And it sounds like gymnastics is not your life, and that's completely fine. You can absolutely do other things. Your mom can't just demand that you keep doing gymnastics just because she likes it. You did it from the age of 2 all the way until 18. But now you want to be a doctor, and that's a noble profession. That's a really good thing to pursue, and the fact that your mom's trying to be like, oh, you're never gonna make it, and instead almost like desperately wants you to do gymnastics instead. Like, dude, she's the one being weird and unreasonable, not you. You're literally just trying to move on with your life, and she's trying to hold you back. So yeah, this is such a ridiculous thing to be upset about, and in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would start making a plan about how to move forward without her interfering. Because today, it starts with her yelling at you, but then tomorrow, it's her like sabotaging opportunities for you. And based on what you described, I can absolutely see that happening. My entitled neighbors demand that I hand over my parking spot to their grandfather, as they feel that the grandfather deserves it way more than me, leaving me no choice but to shut down these entitled idiots once and for all. Here's what happened. Okay, to start things out, I got home and somebody was parking in my spot. It is a garage attached to the apartment complex where I live, and it's a place where you can buy and own a spot, and the garage is accessible only to tenants, but there is no placard on your spot. I mean, we mostly just know each other. So I blocked the person in and I left a note. My neighbors know my car, and I am only blocking 2 other cars from leaving, and I did send them a message directly. If it's a quick visit or something like that, I totally get it. Well, in about 4 to 5 hours, someone is knocking on my door, and this is a neighbor I'm seeing for the first time. He is angry, cussing, and waving his hands. I am apparently blocking his father's car from leaving, and he will call the cops. And I'm just like, cool, I'm happy with this arrangement, go ahead and call them. And then I just close the door. And an important fact is that when I opened the front door, I had a very prominent camera facing at whoever's in my doorway. It recorded with the sound on as well, and I'm just gonna claim I did not feel safe and show them the recording. In another 15 minutes, his wife is knocking on the door, now with a completely different tone of voice. She just asked me to move so her father-in-law can leave. So I grab my keys and I go there to move. And the whole family's waiting for me, with my greetings not being returned. The grandpa leaves and I start backing into my spot. Now, I thought I was done, right? Well, no. At that point, he jumps in front of me, not letting me park. I then got out and I asked what the problem is, but apparently Grandpa is coming back. He only went to pick something up. Grandpa is disabled, even though he has no car sticker or anything visible to show that, mind you. interview, and they say that he can't park in their spot. He can't get out well or even fit there. And instead, they say that my spot is wider due to the entrance of the maintenance room being next to it, so it's great for him. Now, again, that was an easy solution. I like being a good neighbor, and while the grandpa is visiting, I suggested I can park in his spot and the grandpa can use mine. I mean, I don't mind. But no, this isn't good enough. He parks his car there, so where am I supposed to park? I can't park it on the street. So I said, no, I'm not parking on the street, you can. The nearest street parking is like 10 minutes away on foot. He then proceeds to give me a bunch of excuses. He works hard, he's tired, he has family to take care of, he can't walk for 10 minutes, his father's very disabled, his wife has spine and back issues, his son is allergic to the sun or something like that, his hamster has asthma probably. But I just stood there and let him finish his speech, and I went to turn off the car. I was parked halfway in, which was good enough. I mean, I was blocking only one other car, and I just went on my way. In the meantime, I've posted this on something like the HOA message group, and one sweet lady got back to me. They are her new tenants, and she already has taken care of the situation, which honestly should not have been a situation in the first place. Wow, imagine being so entitled that you not only take someone's spot that they pay for, but you also try to inconvenience the person who literally is paying for the spot. I mean, they came up with every guilt trip answer you could possibly think of, but if they really cared about their grandfather, they would be like, okay, park on the street and then we'll pick you up and bring you in. Like, why is that not the solution for these people? They instead want you to park outside while both taking your spot and not giving you anywhere else to park. So yeah, these people suck, they're absolute idiots, and the fact that they tried to pull this is completely unacceptable. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for getting a teacher fired after he nearly shoved me to the ground? Because right now people are saying I'm at fault for him leaving the school, and I seriously am not sure if I made a mistake. Here's what's going on. Okay, for a bit of backstory, I'm a 14-year-old male and I have a medical condition that affects my balance and coordination. Just standing or walking takes effort, and if someone shoves me, I immediately lose balance and fall. And in this case, my friend, who we will call Alan, was behind me and caught me, but if he had not been there, I would have fallen straight on my head. Now, here's what happened. It was a random Friday in September and we were going on a field trip. Nothing about the trip itself is important, but me and Alan were walking over to where everyone else was lining up to get on the buses. We joined our homeroom class line and it looked like the buses were delayed, so we were just standing around talking. Well, suddenly I feel a tap on my shoulder. I turn around and before I can even react, Mr. James, a teacher at our school, full force shoves me backwards. Again, thank God that Alan was there to catch me or I would have been seriously hurt. Then Mr. James yells, "Get in line," even though I was already in line. Now that was bad enough, but what happened next was way worse. He walked two kids down the line and slammed his fist into the shoulder of another student, someone with mental challenges and serious heart conditions who had just had major surgery a few months earlier. I was in total shock. I didn't say anything in the moment because I was still trying to process what had just happened to me, and then I saw him do that. The field trip went as planned, but the entire time Alan and I were trying to figure out what to do. I knew that I needed to report it, not just for me, but especially for the other kid. So once we got back to school, I found the vice principal and I went to her office to explain everything I remembered, who was there, what happened, etc. Later on, she called my parents into a meeting that I wasn't present for, but about 2 weeks after that, Mr. James left the country suddenly for a family emergency. There is a theory that he may have been deported, but I don't know if that's true. Anyways, a few days later, some guy came up to me and called me a jerk for getting Mr. James fired. So seriously, am I at fault for like getting Mr. James in trouble and possibly getting him fired? Because right now, I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong. Okay, first off, you did the right thing by reporting this guy because it sounds like Mr. James is a piece of garbage. Seriously, anyone putting their hands on students like that and hitting them is completely inappropriate, especially when it comes to him pushing you full force. Like, what was that guy thinking? He's a grown adult pushing a teenager. That's not okay. You can't do that to someone. So no, you're definitely not the jerk and you absolutely did the right thing. My toxic boss refuses to give me the raise I absolutely am entitled to, challenging me instead to see if I can find a job elsewhere at that rate. So I decide to get some revenge by doing exactly that, finding a new and better job that's actually paying me my worth. That leaves my boss in a scramble to try and keep me around. Here's what's going on. Okay, I want to start off by saying that I spent a few years at this company. The pay there is not competitive and we all get a measly 3% raise each year, nothing even close to inflation levels. I had been in a starter position and still studying on the side, so I agreed with my boss already a couple years ago that I would get a promotion once I graduated. Well, last September I graduated and I asked for said promotion. I had looked over the workers union salary statistics and the median wage would be around 18% of a bump for me. I didn't expect to get that much because besides them being incredibly cheap, the economy was bad and they had just downsized like 15% of the staff in July. Luckily, I had got myself into a strong position of being one of the only ones left with some kind of unique skills. So I survived the downsizing. amazing. Anyhow, I show my boss a copy of the statistics and I ask for the median. But when I did this, my boss scoffs at me and proceeds to fight as hard as he can to justify lowballing me. He says so many things to me that are just so baffling. He said to me, "Oh, come on, you're rich, bro." And he said that about my salary. And it's like, no, dude, I'm really struggling in this economy. If I give you more, then you'll just spend more. But it's like, it's not your concern what I do with my well-deserved money. He then said to me, no one at that level makes that much here, and that the statistics apparently must be wrong. I later went around the office to find colleagues in that level, and the first coworker that I asked said basically that they earn exactly what I asked for. He then brought up some concerns about my communication. Petty things like me not replying to a colleague's email for like 3 days. Which, by the way, it was 3 days during which I was off-site to give a course somewhere. But my favorite thing he said was the following: "You can go look for other jobs to see how much others are offering. You'll see that it's not going to be any better." He lingered on my salary adjustments until December, negotiating with human resources, and then finally offers me 11%, which is around what I actually expected. But this does come with a catch. Next year, I would not get the usual 3% salary adjustment like everybody else. At first, I was stunned, but I said, you know what? Deal, let's go for it. You see, I had taken his advice, or rather called his bluff, and was already getting quite far in interviews. Come January, I landed an offer from the top company in our field. Think something like Google or Apple, but in my industry. And they were offering me what would have been about a 35% bump. I hit my boss with the news and he promptly panics. He says that they want me to stay and that they need me and that my performance and development have been great and all this other garbage. But apparently they can't match the offer because, according to him, not even top management makes that much. Now, I obviously didn't believe him, but I said, I understand it's not fair that I earn more than everyone else, but just do your best. He then runs to the top boss office and somehow within 30 minutes, they magically found the budget for a 30% raise, which for me is perfect. I now had the leverage to negotiate an even better offer for my future boss, because after all, I had already made up my mind that I was going to leave a long time ago. Dude, I love this so much. Absolutely, this is the way you should handle this. It's so funny dealing with toxic bosses who treat you like this. They think that for some reason you're like enslaved to them and you can't ask for anything higher. And the second you do find something better, they're like, oh, wait a second, we like you. Your performance is off the charts. We really enjoy having you around. And it's like, okay, well, if you enjoy having me around and you think I'm a good member of the team, then give me a higher pay. That's how you show it. Words mean nothing. You saying, oh, good job there, Billy, that's not going to pay my bills, but getting the increase I'm entitled to absolutely does. But regardless, good for you for knowing that you're still going to leave that company. There is no future there in my opinion, and I think leaving is the best option for you. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My parents are desperate to get rid of a tenant who is not paying their rent, so I worked through some legal loopholes to make sure this guy is out the door in a timely fashion, shutting him and his awful attitude down in the process. Here's how I did it. Okay, in the late 70s, my parents bought too much house for too much money, and the place had a basement tenant. My parents said that the rent from the basement will cover the mortgage, but the tenant wasn't paying rent, and after a few months, my parents missed a mortgage payment. The tenant was not even in the place most days. He had another place close to work, and he just used my mother's place as a weekend party crash pad. I tried talking to him, but he really had a bad attitude. My father tried to evict the man, but was defeated by the paperwork. By the time my mother had asked for my help, they were absolutely desperate. They had a mortgage to pay, and they needed the guy gone before the bank came knocking. Now, the courthouse had a law library and nice people at the desk, and with their help, I served and filed some forms, but the tenant didn't care. He just laughed and said I should tell it to the judge. When the court date finally came, the tenant was there looking smug, as if the law weren't on my side. And you know what? I soon learned why. I watched case after case get adjourned. First time up is what the judge would say, and that would be that. And then the case would be delayed for like another 3 months. But the tenant's smugness worked against him. The judge did not like him one bit, and ended up giving him the heave-ho, ordering him as evicted effective immediately. I wanted to celebrate, but the tenant was smiling as he walked out of court, and that caused me serious concern. And this is where an old paralegal helped me out. A judgment's just a piece of paper, he told me. You'll still need the sheriff to get him out. I've been clutching my court order like a trophy, but the paralegal's words deflated me. I said to him, well, can the sheriff come right away? But the paralegal laughed at me, telling me about rights and deposits, about sheriff's fees and delays. I then said, well, is there any other way around that? I mean, I needed help. I was only 17 at the time, and my legal loophole antenna had not grown yet. The paralegal told me that there's no exceptions, adding that unless the man abandoned the place, I would need the sheriff. So I said to him, well, thanks for the loophole. And the paralegal just looked at me like I was nuts. 3 days later, the tenant knocked on our door in a rage because his key to his apartment did not work. But I told him that we found the place abandoned abandoned, which was technically almost true, sort of. It had been unoccupied for a few days, and when I entered purely to do a wellness check, the place had a decidedly unoccupied feel. I felt obliged to call it into the police just to report it and try to make a record of it. Abandoned residential unit, and the landlord is moving contents to storage. Abandoned, the tenant said. Where's my stuff? Now, the nice lady at the courthouse library had not been very impressed with my eviction loophole, but she helped me draft a release. The lady said, "You're going to need one," after admonishing me for coloring outside the lines and making me promise not to pull a stunt like that ever again. I said to the tenant that they need to sign here, trading the release for the storage company's address. The tenant then called me from the storage place an hour later, telling me what a jerk I was, that I had stuck him with a big storage fee. But I just said to him, look, if you don't pay the storage fee, they're gonna say that you abandoned the unit, and you don't want to do that. You'll lose all rights if you abandon a place. And after that, I hung up the phone because I knew I got that guy out of our place. Wow, this is awesome. This is really cool. Like the original poster says, they did this when they were 17 years old. There's no way I would be able to do that when I'm 17. Like, this guy is absolutely a future lawyer in the works. And I love the fact that you did everything right. You played the game, and this guy absolutely did not have a leg to stand on. And based on his attitude and the way he was treating you and your family, this really does feel like karma working its magic. My aunt demands that I turn off every light whenever I leave the room. So I decide to maliciously comply, resulting in my aunt sitting in the dark on more than one occasion. Here's what happened. Back when I was in high school, I lived with an extremely frugal aunt while my parents were abroad. She had this obsession with saving on the electricity bill. And it's like, fair enough, but she took it to the extreme. One day she caught me walking out of the kitchen and scolded me for leaving the ceiling light on, even though I was going back in less than a minute. But she said she didn't care if I was gone for 30 seconds. When you leave a room, you turn off every single light. And I said, okay, got it. So I started turning off lights whenever I leave a room, and soon I pretty much got used to it. Later that week, she was cooking in the kitchen, and I was helping her grab ingredients from the pantry, which was technically a separate little room connected to the kitchen. I stepped into the pantry, grabbed the oil, walked out, and turned off every single kitchen light as I exited the room. And when I did that, she shrieked mid-stir like she had gone blind. "What are you doing? I'm still here." I said to her, "Oh, I thought you weren't. You said turn off every light when I leave a room, and my muscle memory is already getting used to it." But you know what? It didn't stop there. Anytime we were in the living room and I got up to use the bathroom, I'd leave her in pitch black darkness. Once she was watching TV and I just clicked off the power bar on my way out. It took about 4 days of bumping into furniture before she said, "Okay, maybe just use common sense." Now, I still turned the bathroom light off every time she used it though, because I wasn't in the room after all. And it took a while before my muscle memory returned to normal, but thankfully it did annoy her in the process. Yeah, it's super weird to be like, you need to turn off every light all the time. Anytime you leave the room, you gotta turn off that light. And it's like, yeah, I get that, but if you really want to be crazy about it, then let's get crazy. Let's live in the dark, basically. Like, what is going on right now? So yeah, I love the way you handled this. This really was a good way of maliciously complying, and you did it in a roundabout way, like you didn't even mean to do this, which in my opinion makes this all the funnier. Did I overreact for not clapping when my brother's girlfriend revealed my baby name for my unborn child? Because right now I'm still incredibly upset and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 29-year-old female and I'm 21 weeks pregnant with my first child. We've kept the name a secret. My husband and I agreed on the name Ivy early on and have just been referring to her as the baby to the family. Last weekend, my mom threw a gender reveal party and invited my extended family and my younger brother's girlfriend. And for reference, my younger brother and his girlfriend have been dating for 5 months. After the "it's a girl" part, my mom starts bringing out cupcakes and my brother's girlfriend loudly says, "Well, I guess we can finally call her Ivy now." When she said this, everybody clapped, but I just stood there awkwardly. I never told her. I had told my mom in confidence because she was making a quilt with initials. I then pulled my mom aside and she just brushed it off. As she said, "Oh, she just got excited." I then asked my brother's girlfriend later how she knew, and she said, "Well, your mom told me, and I thought it might be cute to announce it." I didn't cry or yell, but I went home early and I ignored text messages for the rest of the weekend. My mom then says that I killed the mood, and my brother says that I'm being possessive over a name. But I'm just so frustrated. I wanted to introduce my daughter's name myself. So am I overreacting about this situation, or are they right? Because right now I'm still incredibly pissed off. Okay, dude, first of all, no, you did not overreact. If someone did that to me, I'd be pretty pissed off. Because the name really is special. It's not something you want people to throw around just all over the place, because then it loses its luster. And then before you know it, someone's gonna steal it. And then you're never gonna be able to use that name because like, oh God, someone else took it. And that's definitely happened several times before. And the fact that your mom secretly told everybody about it is completely toxic. Like, you have every right to be pissed off at her, and also probably be guarded at telling her anything secretive in the future. So no, you did not overreact and you have every right to be pissed off. An entitled boomer was acting like a complete fool at the airport airport, all because his flight wasn't on time in the way he wanted, as he literally humiliated himself in a hilarious fashion, especially after the airport staff clapped back. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of backstory, my wife had injured her foot the night before we were set to take a transatlantic flight back to the States from Italy. We thought it healed okay, but the morning of our flight, it started to swell significantly while we were waiting to board at the Naples airport. During the first hour of the flight to Atlanta, where we would need to catch our connecting flight, I asked the flight attendants for some ice and if we could have a wheelchair when we touched down. My parents raised me on the idea that you catch more flies with honey, so I did what I could to be polite and grateful with each request I had to make. The flight attendants were accommodating and amazing and helped ensure that my wife was comfortable during the 9-hour flight. So we touched down and they were extremely apologetic as they explained that we were going to have to walk off the plane and all the way down the tunnel to the gate as they can't bring the wheelchair any closer. I grabbed up our bags and my wife said, okay, no problem. So she hobbled slowly and did her best to grab railings for support. We took our time and eventually made it there. Eventually, a delightful woman scooped up my wife in a wheelchair and guided us to the restrooms, baggage claim, and also the drop-off point where we had to place our bags for the connecting flight. This woman was telling jokes, asking us about our trip, and being an all-around wonderful human to my wife. I mean, we were having a ball. Once we dropped off our connecting bags, she took us to an area where other people in wheelchairs were waiting in a sort of queue to go through security. And this is where the boomer of our story was waiting. So, in this area, there was a gentleman who checked us in and confirmed our connecting flight, another gentleman who helped us load our baggage, and a woman who was at a computer terminal and was requesting agents to assist all those in wheelchairs. We thanked the man who checked us in and thanked the man who loaded our bags. We then proceed to wait as we hear and see others passing through security. Our flight doesn't board for another 40 minutes and doesn't leave for another hour and 10 minutes, so we just kind of sit and chat for a little bit. We also know that we have the earliest flight of everyone there because they arrange the queue when we arrive. They put my wife first and they say as much. About 20 minutes pass and 3 more people arrive and are placed in the queue. It's looking like a Mario Kart race is about to begin when the boomer, who's destined to be a fool, starts to get impatient. My wife and I are passing the time chatting when I notice he is starting to become visibly agitated. So he just shuffles in his wheelchair and grimaces a bit. About 25 minutes of waiting and another employee approaches the woman at the computer terminal. They then start having a conversation when this guy yells out, "All of us have connecting flights, you know." This statement is of course superfluous, as I cannot in my head imagine why else the employees of the airport would have lined everyone up in this queue, unless the Atlanta airport has some form of wheelchair-based Mad Max Fury Road kind of event that we just don't know about. The woman at the computer, a saint by all accounts given her patience with this idiot, calmly replies by saying, "Yes sir, we know you have connecting flights. We're working as quickly as we can to get agents here to escort each person through security." The man who had arrived and was speaking with her chimes in as well and says, "We are going to make sure that you are taken care of and don't miss your flights." Now, it's clear to my wife and I at this point that every member of Atlanta airport staff that we see is doing the job assigned to them and is working to take care of us. But this completely escapes this entitled boomer. He gestures to the 2 men who signed us into the queue and helped us out with our bags, who were both currently on their phones since there have not been any new arrivals to the Mario Kart queue. "What about them?" this entitled boomer shouts, his face turning red and his mustache bristling up to make it look like he's about to audition for the part of Vernon in the new Harry Potter series. The saint replies calmly and says, "Sir, they are not agents. They assist with checking people in and handling their connecting flight baggage." Well, this entitled boomer has had it at this point. His unwillingness to hear reason and his impatience for lackitude to start the race gets the better of him. "This is a stupid system, and of course you would have to do this in the stupidest way possible. Why in the world would you do it this way? You're so stupid." The man who had walked up and was conversing with the saint drops all pretense of politeness at this point and looks at this guy dead in the eye and says, "Well, if you dislike it that much and don't want to let us handle it, you could, just walk through security on your own." The entitled boomer then immediately shuts up and stews in his wheelchair in a silent rage. Literally a minute after the exchange, a pleasant agent by the name of Jasmine swoops in and wheels my wife through security. We make sure to verbally thank every one of the employees in the waiting area before we go. I look back one last time at this entitled boomer as we are leaving, and he is red in the face and looking quietly down at the floor. Once we are on the flight home, my wife and I both talk about the exchange and how cringy his treatment was of the staff as a whole. Yeah, I'm right there with the original poster. I honestly cannot stand when people make these big show and tell about how upset they are at an airport, like especially in a place like that, because dude, the plane's gonna show up when it's there. It's not gonna get there any sooner with your complaining, so you might as well just sit tight and deal with it. Plus, the people who helped you and the agents have nothing to do with the flight being on time or late. It is literally not their fault. Because I think the original poster hit the nail on the head. You will absolutely attract more flies with honey, and the boomer in this story was definitely vinegar through and through. Did I overreact by leaving my own engagement dinner after what my family said to me when I said said that I didn't want to serve people at my own party, because right now everybody seems to be teaming up against me and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm still kind of processing this, so I'm sorry if it's all over the place. I'm a 20-year-old female and I just had my engagement dinner this weekend. It was a small thing at my parents' house, just close family and some friends. It was supposed to be a happy day. I was in a good mood, a bit exhausted, but I was excited. So after the main stuff was done and people started settling down for food, my mom quietly tells me to go to the kitchen and start serving people. Now, I thought she was joking at first, like I'm literally the one getting engaged. I've been up since 6 in the morning helping decorate, cleaning, organizing, smiling through 300 introductions. I mean, I had not eaten all day. So I told her very calmly, "Mom, can someone else do it? I just want to sit for 5 minutes and eat." She then just gives me this look. Then my aunt joins in and says something like, "This is how modern girls act now, so full of themselves the moment they get a ring." I think she thought she was whispering, but half the room could hear it. I looked over at my fiance, expecting him to maybe say something, but he just looked down at his plate, like he just didn't want to be involved. And at this point, I don't know what came over me. I felt so embarrassed, so angry. I went to the bedroom and I changed into some jeans. I called a cab and then I left. I then texted my fiance that I needed space and I didn't want to make a scene. Well, now my mom's crying, saying I ruined the event. My dad says I disrespected the family, and my fiance says he gets why I was upset, but he wishes I hadn't walked out like that. I honestly don't know. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I should have just sucked it up. But a part of me keeps thinking, well, if this is how it starts, what's next? So did I overreact here? Because right now I'm not really sure. No, I don't think you overreacted at all. Honestly, the way your family's acting is pretty cruel. You literally got engaged and they're trying to be like, okay, serve everyone food. Like, it is not an unusual ask for you to be like, hey, can somebody else do it? I kind of want to sit and enjoy this moment. For them to be like, oh, you've got to do it. And then for your stupid aunt to be like, wow, women these days, they get a ring and they're so full of themselves. It's like, maybe that's how you act, but that's not at all how the original poster was acting. They didn't ask for like some big task. They just said, hey, I don't want to serve people. I want to sit and eat, which kind of also leads me to believe that they do this to you a lot. And this might be the first time you've ever stood up for yourself. But honestly, with all things considered, I don't think you overreacted, because for them to make you serve people during your party is kind of weird in my opinion. My friends literally exclude me from a brunch date that we had planned, as they came early just to try and get a table before I even knew they were showing up, making me wonder why I was friends with them even in the first place. Here's what happened. So I used to be friends with these two girls who I will call Noah and Catherine. One weekend, they got invited to go horseback riding, and they were talking about it in front of me, and I felt really left out because I love riding horses. Anyways, that's when they turned to me and say, hey, do you want to meet up with us for brunch after? And I was like, oh, where are you guys going? And they said they're going to Cracker Barrel. Now, I know on the weekend, the time they wanted to go to Cracker Barrel has a huge wait list. You can't reserve a table as it is first come, first serve. So I just say, sure, I'll happily meet you for brunch. They told me what time they expect to be there, and I know it's gonna be like half an hour to an hour late. So I'm still getting ready when I get a call from them saying, hey, where are you? We're here. Did you reserve a table? So I said to them, wait, you're there on time? All right, I'm on my way. I then jumped in my car and I head to Cracker Barrel. And when I get there, I don't see them waiting in line. So I call them and they say, oh yeah, we're actually already seated. So the hostess leads me back, and not only are they seated, they already have food. And I'm just like, wait a second, how did you guys get a table so soon? They then told me that they stole someone else's reservation. So basically they just put their name in and then waited for the first available table to be called. And they said they were that party so that they got seated immediately, and made me feel like crap for not being there an hour ahead of time to reserve a table for them, leaving me completely baffled at the way they acted. Okay, yeah, these are definitely not your friends. They literally went to this place early to find a spot and didn't even wait for you. And that's awful. Like, that really sucks. Like, you don't deserve that. And based on this story alone, I can see why you used to be friends with these girls. Because if this was like my friend group, we would all wait for each other. We would communicate and be like, oh yeah, I'm on my way. Or, oh, hey, I'm gonna be there in like 10 minutes. Or something like that. You wouldn't just team up and be like, okay, we're gonna go early and then tell the original poster after the fact. Like, they already have food in front of them, meaning that they've been waiting there a while. Like, what's going on right now? That's so dumb. Not to mention the fact that they stole a reservation. Like, what's that all about? They literally stole someone else's reservation to get the spot that they're going to, all the while not including you in this plan. Like, what's happening right now? If anything, they probably just see you as a backup plan and someone they could just write off. And that really sucks. Like, really, really sucks. So I really hope you found better friends than this, because these people do not sound like winners, as these are not the kind of people you would ever want to be friends with. My psycho boss from last summer lied a lot, but her biggest one was that she said to everybody that she was Miss Alaska. And even though I investigated this and tried to look into it as best as I could, she simply had no evidence that any of this was true, as she lied to everybody for years about this. Here's what happened. I want to start off by saying that this woman in question is very beautiful and in her late 40s. So maybe that's why so many people just believed her right off the bat. Last summer when I worked for her, I was in my mid-20s. I was hired for a restaurant and lodge work position in a small rural town. The first day I was under her employment during orientation, she had everyone sign NDAs. I've never had to sign an NDA for a restaurant job before, at least not this kind of NDA before. Sure, I've had to sign to keep trade secrets under wraps before, and I'd never exposed those, but this was different. This was an NDA to keep us quiet, more like a Kardashian-type NDA, which is not a good sign straight out of the gate. Directly after we all signed, or she verified we signed online, she proceeded to tell us that up here in Alaska, restaurant owners had to pay an additional 40% tax on their employees' tips. This lady was literally lying through her teeth all summer long. She lied to her employees, messed with tip money, and allocated it strangely. Somehow, all of our tipped income came in the form of cash, and no complaints about that, but it was always a few dollars and a couple cents short of what our hourly earned rate was. If my check for my hourly wages was like $1,000, my cash tip would always be something like $998.75, or something like that. She said it's just how it all usually came out, that it pretty closely matched my hourly pay. But to me, this math was not making sense. She also played favorites based on religion. The Christian workers ended up getting paid more and got more hours than the non-Christian ones. But the wildest thing I heard her lie about was one she told to everyone in town. She told everyone in town, including her employees and even fooling her own husband and children, that we were meant to believe that she was at one point Miss Alaska. I remember she told me about it while we were all driving in a van one day. I immediately went to look her up because I wanted to see how she looked in her dress, and I was excited to have girl talk about it with her. At the time, we were driving through a section of road with no service, so I made a mental note to look it up later. She had talked about it for a bit, but at my questioning and attempted excited girl talk, she seemed to shrug away from talking about it in detail and changed the subject pretty quickly, and that had me feeling really suspicious about all of it. As soon as I got into service, I looked up every Miss Alaska the state has ever had, and she is nowhere in that list. I didn't say anything to her as not to embarrass her in the moment and piss her off, since she already didn't love me since I'm not Christian. Plus, I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing her name somehow. I researched and researched everywhere I could, even checked at a local library to see old news articles about past Miss Alaska, and nothing with her name on it ever showed up. I looked for one for every year and her name was not there. When I asked people in town who knew her about it, they would all excitedly tell me that she was Miss Alaska, but none of them had even seen her win or had even known her when she won. They'd all just been told to by her or someone else that she was Miss Alaska. They all believe it and have not questioned it. Her own husband thinks that she was Miss Alaska. Even her children believe that. I mean, really, why lie about something so easy to look up? Well, surprise, surprise, I ended up parting with her company on poor terms. It's the only job I've ever been fired from in my life. After she fired me, she called me a cancer and told me she was going to cut me out of town. I mean, she was a very high drama woman. Now, most of the time, I really just don't care about this lady anymore. She is often not worth wasting my thoughts or my breath on. However, I recently found out that since I have left her employment, this boss has lied and talked crap about me to anyone who will listen, even complete strangers that walk into her restaurant. So I don't feel bad exposing the fact that she lied about being Miss Alaska. But here's a definitive warning to any other servers in the restaurant business. Do not work in a place that makes you sign an NDA, because that is a massive red flag that you definitely should not ignore. Holy crap, what a psychopath. Seriously, this is some crazy behavior. You can bet that this lady's been spreading this lie for years, all because for the first time it probably makes her feel special. Like seriously, what a weird lie. Like dude, you are such a loser for doing that. And it's one of those grandiose ones that are really easy to look up. Like if you really were Miss Alaska, there would be some kind of photo or some kind of like news article about it. There would be talk in the town that yeah, this local person was Miss Alaska, and not just because you said it and therefore it's gonna be true. So yeah, maybe you did get fired and it was under like really bad circumstances, but at least you're not lying about being Miss Alaska, because that's a lie that absolutely is insane to try and justify. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My former best friend who demanded my dog after we broke up is trying to sue me for emotional distress, putting me in one of the most ridiculous situations I've ever been in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so we adopted a dog by the name of Buddy a year into our relationship. I paid for the adoption fee, all the vet bills, I paid for his food, his training, etc. My name is the only one on all the paperwork and the microchip. Now, when we split, she agreed that Buddy should stay with me since he's deeply bonded to me and my apartment is his home. But a month later, she started demanding I give him to her because she was lonely and needed him more, but I simply refused. Now, after I repeatedly repeatedly told her no and blocked her number, which is right when I was getting these text messages that were awful, I thought it was all over, but I was completely wrong, because last week I was served papers. Yes, she is suing me over this, and this is not for ownership of the dog. Her lawyer was apparently smart enough to tell her that she has no legal claim there. She is suing me for $10,000 for emotional distress and for loss of companionship. The claim states that by withholding a shared emotional support asset, yeah, that's what they're calling my dog, I have caused her severe anxiety and depression. It also claims that I am unjustly enriching myself by retaining 100% of the affection and companionship of the dog that apparently we raised, and she included selfies of her and Buddy as evidence of their bond. Well, when I got this, I had to hire a lawyer. He read the filing and just started laughing. He said it's the most frivolous, entitled lawsuit he has seen in years, and that we will easily get dismissed. He's drafting a response now demanding that she pay for my legal fees when we win. Now, the wildest part is that her mom called me, not to apologize by the way, but to tell me I should just settle. She said it would be easier for everyone if you just paid her something so she can move on. Think of it as a final breakup gift. So now I'm out $2,000 for a lawyer so far just to defend myself against this nonsense. But I'm going to follow my lawyer's advice to the letter, and I will be countersuing for every single penny I've had to spend on this, because this situation is absolutely insane. Man, your former friend is an idiot. Seriously. Who in their right mind would be like, oh, I'm suing you because you didn't give me the dog? You know, the same dog you literally said, oh yeah, you could keep that dog. It's yours. You guys have a bond. Like, what a moron. Are you kidding me right now? Like, what's stopping her from buying a new dog? Like, seriously. Instead, she's wasting her time and $2,000, if not more, just to sue someone else for their dog. Like, what a ridiculous thing to do to somebody. So I really hope this all works out in your favor, because like you said, this really is a frivolous lawsuit, and I'm willing to bet that the judge and anybody else who sees that will also agree. Today, I got some petty revenge by making my coworker eat some ground coffee, humiliating him in a way that he absolutely deserved. Here's what happened. So I work in a quite small office with a team of only 8 people. Our kitchen is so small that only one person can stand inside at a time. No fancy equipment, just a microwave and a kettle. This coworker of mine, although not a bad person at heart, can just be very annoying at times. He acts like a know-it-all, even though he might not actually know what something is. He will make up some BS on the spot, and if you try to educate him about a new thing, he will just dismiss you. So a few days ago, we got a box of coffee grounds, which I was surprised to see because there was no filter papers, French press, or any other similar equipment in the office kitchen to make ground coffee from. I have worked in a cafe before, so I knew that ground coffee cannot be made like instant coffee because it does not completely dissolve in water. But the smell of that coffee was heavenly, so I really wanted to try it out, but I couldn't due to the lack of equipment. Well, this guy says to me, well, what's the big deal? Just mix it in water and make it like normal. To which I tried to tell him that this is not the same, but like always, he just dismissed me. I asked him to smell it, and he too said that he loved the smell, so I said you should eat it. And you know what? That's exactly what he did. Just the tiniest amount, and then he said that it was good. But I think he was absolutely lying. And it was then that I decided to call his bluff. I said that he should make the coffee the way he was describing. And you know what? He took it as a challenge. He put some water in the coffee grounds, stirred for a while, and then added some milk. It was still looking pale white, and the coffee hadn't brewed at all. But I waited for the look on his face after he took a sip. He tried to pretend it was not as bad, but I just burst out laughing. Then I attempted to make the coffee using a tea strainer, just to show him how it could be made. And you know what? It somewhat worked. This dude had to eat his own words along with the ground coffee, making this entire situation so very worth it. Holy crap, I love this story so much. First of all, this guy absolutely had this coming because I've had a coworker like this before. They can never be wrong. They're always arguing against whatever you're saying, regardless of what it is, and they just always have to be right. So I'm sure it must have been a fantastic experience watching his face melt as he realized the coffee he was making is probably not exactly what he was thinking of. So truly, good for you for tricking this guy, because I think he absolutely deserved it. Am I the jerk for wanting my alcoholic aunt and her 3-year-old son out of the house after they literally destroy our house in a way that's completely disgusting? Because even after they've moved out, my mom is suggesting that we take the 3-year-old toddler back into our house so that we can raise him instead of my aunt, leaving me in an awful situation because right now I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what's happening. So last year, my mom let my homeless aunt move into our home with her toddler. She gave her my little sister's room, forcing me and my sister to share a room, and told us it would only be for a few weeks, just enough time for her to get back on her feet. Well, it's been nearly a year and nothing has changed. If anything, it's gotten worse. My aunt is a full-blown alcoholic. She's always drunk, constantly starts fights with everyone. She yells, insults us, and basically makes the house miserable. She does nothing to help out around the house either, and the worst of all is that she completely neglects her son. From the beginning, we were the ones doing everything for him. He wasn't potty trained when he arrived, and it was us, not her, who had to train him. He used to go to the bathroom all over the home, literally because she refused to buy him diapers, and she wouldn't clean up after him either. And when she broke her leg, she was now the one that we had to clean up after. And she was so nasty. Her room was a mess. The smell was completely unbearable. She constantly disrespected my parents, especially my mom. If she got scolded, she would then yell, "Oh, I get it, just shut up," and then lock herself in the room like a teenager. Now, her son has improved a bit, but he's now an extremely bratty toddler. He doesn't listen, he throws tantrums constantly, and repeats the same bad behavior no matter how many times he's corrected. I know it's not his fault entirely, and I do feel bad for him, but that doesn't mean that I want to raise him. My mom had finally had enough and told her sister to leave yesterday. Well, she did in fact leave, but now there's talk of us keeping her kid and raising him, since according to them, he's innocent. I mean, my mom even suggested it, but I shut that idea down immediately because I knew I'd be the one doing all the work. And I know this because this happened with my nephew. And don't get me wrong, I love the kid, but my God, I'm not doing that again. I am a child-free person. I've never signed up for this, and I don't want to raise anyone else's kid, period. I already did way more than I ever agreed to in my opinion. And now I'm wondering if I'm heartless for saying no to keeping the child. I know he'll probably just get bounced around between other relatives, and that really sucks, but I am not his parent, and I can't sacrifice my peace and future for someone else's irresponsibility. So seriously, am I the jerk here? Because right now I don't know what to do. Okay, honestly, I think you did the right thing by turning that down, because your mom's completely out of her mind if she thinks, "Oh yeah, we'll take care of him. He is innocent. He doesn't understand the world." Because you said it yourself, you would be the one to take care of that kid, and that is not something you signed up for. So no, you are not the jerk, and honestly, that kid is not your responsibility. And I know for a fact if I was in your shoes and your mom was somehow successful in getting that kid back in the house, I would personally start trying to find some other place to live, because there's no way you should ever be forced to deal with that. Am I overreacting over my mother-in-law injecting my wife with Ozempic against her will? Because despite the fact that I'm furious after she did that to my wife is still on the fence about cutting her off or not, leaving me boiling mad and honestly not sure what to do next. Here's what's going on. Okay, I want to start off by saying that my wife's mom is not only insane, but in my opinion is an objectively bad person. She abandoned my wife when she was 6 years old so that she could party, sleep with lots of men, and live her life, as she would put it. My wife's dad died around this same time, and she ended up being raised by her stepdad. Her mom was always unpredictable, mean, and at times very violent. Ever since meeting my wife, I've seen several terrible behaviors from my mother-in-law. She tried to talk my wife into donating some of her eggs to her so she could have another child to appease a boyfriend. She set up dinners with my wife and then canceled them time and time again, and my wife is always crushed. She regularly calls my wife names that are absolutely awful, and at one point, she even said she was going to try and take part of my wife's inheritance from her deceased father, even though the court had ruled that all of it went to my wife. I mean, the list goes on and on. Well, today was my last straw. My wife is voluptuous, curvy, and thick, and I absolutely love her body. Well, her mom started taking Ozempic, and out of the blue, she told my wife that she was too fat and she needed an injection. My wife said no over and over again, but her mom is extremely pushy. So what she did next honestly shocked me. She lifted up my wife's shirt and injected her belly without her consent and against her will. And now I'm furious. I immediately said, no, she is cut off and she can never see you or hurt you ever again. My wife is very upset about the injection, but also isn't sure she wants to cut her off just yet. I believe she's forgiving and rationalizing this because she's happy to have any relationship with her mom at all, especially after being abandoned by her as a child. So seriously, am I overreacting for my mother-in-law injecting my wife against her will? Because right now I'm so mad that I can't even see straight. Oh my gosh, no, you're not overreacting. Your wife is delusional if she thinks this is okay. Because you hit the nail on the head. She's absolutely trying to rationalize this away. And this is not on the same level as anything else this woman's done in the past. This is quite literally her assaulting your wife. Like, this is so messed up. Who knows what that could have done to your wife? Like, you can't just give someone an injection like that when they're like, no, I don't want this, over and over again. So no, you're not overreacting. If anything, you're the only rational person in this situation, because your wife's mom is absolutely insane, and getting away from her and keeping her away from your wife should absolutely be the top priority. My boss demands that anytime we take a vacation day, we need to give a solid reason why. So I decided to maliciously comply by quite literally trauma dumping some fake scenarios in my life to make him regret ever wanting to know why I was taking time off. Here's what happened. So I work in a pretty low-stress job, which makes it absolutely hilarious that my boss demands that whenever we take our paid time off, we have to give a good reason. Like, dude, why do I need to give you a good reason to take my vacation days? They're mine. I'm entitled to take them, to dedicate the time to my new hobby of staring at the ceiling, and it literally is none of your business. Well, I plan to take a few few days off to recharge after a very relatively intense work week. And unfortunately, the boss thought this was a great time to send a reminder email that if we intend to take time off, we need to provide a reason and have it approved. And this proved to be a fatal mistake on his part. I went into his office with my head hanging low, and I started talking about my dad's cancer and how intensive his chemotherapy was. I didn't make myself cry, but I was putting that theater class I took in college to good use. I think I might have even said, well, I'm just so used to seeing my dad as this strong, invulnerable guy, but he's just a human, you know, and soon he might be gone. How do you even deal with something like that? Now, at this point, my dad had been cancer-free for years, so this was purely performative, but my boss just looked so uncomfortable. It was great. I wish I could say this caused the boss to send out an email saying we no longer needed to give a reason for our time off, but I had no such luck. Instead, I just kept coming up with other traumatic life experiences to justify my vacations. And I think my grandma died 3 times the past few years. I mean, the poor woman. Which means I may need to come up with something new for when she actually does die. My boss still gets visibly uncomfortable whenever I come to ask for time off in person instead of via email, which to me is absolutely hilarious. Yeah, first of all, that's a really stupid policy that guy has, and honestly, I love the fact that you're taking advantage of it. It literally begs the question, oh, you want me to give you a good reason? Congratulations and get the Oscar ready because I'm gonna give you the performance of a lifetime. Because I'm right there with the original poster, like my personal time off is my time and not yours. I don't have to give you a reason, I could literally just sit at home and do nothing. And why should I have to give a reason? Just so you can try to guilt trip me out of going on vacation? Like, dude, I've got to take time off just like anybody else. And having you breathe down my neck about it is not gonna make my situation enjoyable. So good for you for making this guy incredibly uncomfortable because from the sounds of it, he absolutely deserved it. An entitled mom lets her stupid son play with my $200 Lego set after being told repeatedly not to do it, resulting in this Lego set being destroyed accidentally according to them, in a way that makes me wonder if there's any pieces still missing. And I'm honestly still pissed off at this and I just don't know what to do. Here's how it went down. Okay, to start things off, I'm a big Lego collector, and a year ago for my birthday, I received a retired Indominus Rex breakout set, which was my dream to get ever since I first saw it. I built it at my grandmother's house since my grandfather passed away at the time, so I wanted to stay with her while I built it. So fast forward to some months ago, and a relative of my grandmother went to visit her and decided to bring her 10-year-old son with her. After some chatting, she asked my grandmother if her son can play with it, which the response from my grandmother was no, since I told her when I built it that no one was allowed to touch it if it wasn't for moving stuff, since that Lego is expensive and it means a lot to me. So hearing this information, the entitled mother decides to go ahead and let her son play with it. My grandmother tries to stop her, but it's already too late. An hour later, when my father was picking me up from martial arts, he told me that the kid, while playing with the Lego, apparently accidentally destroyed many parts of it. And when I arrived there, I saw my grandmother trying to fix the Lego set, and many pieces were on the ground or just scattered across the room. After I had to rebuild it, we tried to confront the entitled mother, and she just passed it off like it was nothing, and told us that this is a toy her son should be able to play with. I mean, she never apologized either. To this day, I'm not sure if there are any parts missing around the house, because the damage unfortunately is already done. Okay, this story really is upsetting because as a collector myself, if I spent $200 on some kind of like set of any kind, like I don't care what it is, and then someone's stupid bratty kid started playing with it and then destroyed it, the parents of that idiot kid are absolutely paying me back. And in my opinion, this mom is responsible for the Lego set breaking. Like seriously, you were told repeatedly, no, you cannot touch that. But then you go ahead and say, oh, this is something we should be allowed to play with, which is just so stupid and entitled to say. Like seriously, you have no right over any of this. So yeah, this lady is completely out of her mind and she absolutely is responsible for all of this breaking. And the fact that she's not even owning up to it or even apologizing, in my opinion, is incredibly toxic. Am I the jerk for asking a stranger to mute his phone on the bus, as we were literally going to be on a long haul bus for 4 hours straight, resulting in one of the most awkward exchanges I've ever had in my life? Here's what's going on. Okay, so I was just on a long haul bus for about 4 hours straight. This was assigned seating and it was nearly full, so I couldn't switch seats even if I wanted to. The man in the seat next to me had his phone up and was scrolling through Instagram watching reels with the sound on. Not really obnoxiously loud, mind you, but loud enough to hear the sound clearly since I was sitting right next to him. Now, normally I will not do anything, but the thought of potentially 4 hours of this was too much to take. So I asked him if he would mind muting the phone or using headphones. When I said this, he got really upset and told me he'd never been asked to mute his phone in public before. Then he said that he didn't have any headphones, and how was he supposed to hear the videos if the sound was off? But I told him that he wouldn't be able to hear them, and then neither would I, which would kind of be the point. He then proceeded to ask me several times why I had not said please when I asked him, but I told him that I had asked him respectfully if he wouldn't mind muting the phone, but I'd be happy to add please now, and that's exactly what he did. He was visibly upset and kept grumbling rumbling for a long time, but he did keep the phone muted after that. So am I the jerk here? Did I go a little bit too far? Or was I justified in telling this guy to be quiet? No, there's no way you're the jerk here. This guy is absolutely the jerk for trying to be like, oh, well, why haven't you said please? It's like that last little dig he can possibly make to be like, oh, I'm gonna make you beg for it. And I hate people like that. People like that disgust me, and they are literally the lowest forms of life. Like seriously, anyone who acts like that is so stupid. It's them trying to reclaim some small iota of power that they never have in their real life. So they annoy other people around them just to try and get like a rise out of them. And that's not fair for you, and that's not fair for anybody else on this stupid bus. So no, you're not the jerk, and if anything, you did the right thing. Because if I was on that trip for 4 hours, I would lose my mind as well. Thanks for watching. Subscribe down below if you haven't already. And also, please subscribe to Am I the Genius? I think you're gonna love what they're making over there. It's a great channel, and you should definitely check it out. Everything will be linked down below in the description. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.